Come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The senators in attendance will stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Todd Bradbury, Bethel Baptist Church, Midlothian, Virginia. Following the prayer, all will remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by Senate Page Becca Bollock.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we come to you now as a grateful people. We thank you, Lord, for the gift of this day and for the gift of each other, and for your calling that you've placed on these, your servant leaders who serve our commonwealth. We humbly ask you, Lord, for your blessing on each member of this assembly, that they might be their best selves in fulfilling their oaths to represent not only their constituents, but also the entire commonwealth. Grant them double portions of wisdom, discernment, and strength. Enable them to govern rightly according to your will, with mercy, justice, and love for all. And Lord, I pray for each one of us in our personal relationships with you. Help us to live intentional, unhurried lives. Help us to listen to your voice through prayer and the reading of Scripture. May we be compelled to act on what we hear. Help us to live as new creations, abiding in you, trusting in your sustaining presence, and may our lives bear the fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I pray these things in your holy name, and all of God's people said, Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job.
Clerk will call the roll. All those in attendance will please record their vote aye. Clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Monday, February 10th, 2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now comes the time in the morning hour where we have the privilege and the pleasure of recognizing our distinguished guests with us here in the Senate gallery. I will give my usual reminder that the way this will proceed is that a senator will stand up, recognize an individual or group. I will then offer the warm welcome of the Senate, and at the very end, we will all applaud together. And I'd like to begin by recognizing the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Good morning, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Good morning, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you. It's my distinct privilege to introduce to you the Reverend Todd Bradbury, who gave our wonderful prayer and invocation this morning. Reverend Bradbury is pastor of Bethel Baptist Church, which is located in Midlothian, Virginia, and it is quite a historic church. It was built in 1894 and has served the community for well over a century. I want to thank him for his lovely prayer and for the invocation of peace and thoughtfulness in all of our endeavors, and I ask that you give a warm welcome of the Senate to the Reverend.
I thank the Senator. Will the Reverend Todd Bradbury please rise in the gallery along with your family and guests? Reverend Bradbury, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for that really beautiful prayer. We're all very grateful to you for your moral leadership in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We echo the generous and eloquent words of the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hoshby, and we thank your family and guests for being here as well. You're welcome back here anytime. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for two introductions.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joining us in the gallery today, we have the group Drive Virginia Forward with us today. Drive Virginia Forward is an organization that's been working with me for the last 5 years to try and expand driving privileges to some of our newest Virginians. And they're here to witness what they're hoping will be a very important and hopefully historic vote today on some legislation that will expand driving for about 200,000 people in Virginia. And Mr. President, I hope you give them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank the Senator. Would our friends from Driving Virginia Forward please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Thank you for your presence and for your advocacy. We are greatly appreciative. It takes people being involved in the process to make it work that much better. So you're welcome back to your capital anytime. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from Driving Virginia Forward. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also joining us in the gallery today, we also have representatives of New Virginia Majority. And New Virginia Majority, likewise, works to help some of our newest Virginians in terms of getting acclimated to the Commonwealth of Virginia. They've been working on this driver's license issue. They also work on voting rights and other issues that are important to the minority community and the New Virginia community. And I would hope that you all could give them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank the Senator. Would our friends from New Virginia Majority in the gallery please rise if you are able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Again, thank you, too, for your advocacy and for fighting on behalf of people who often do not have a voice. And we're very grateful for your leadership in that regard. We echo the eloquent and generous words of Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville. You're welcome back here anytime. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from New Virginia Majority. Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
Senator has the floor, and it's great to see you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I follow up with an introduction to CASA, who the members are also here because they are very enthusiastic about some of the legislation I expect we will be passing today regarding drivers' credentials and minimum wage. Among other things. They have been working tirelessly around our communities to advocate for a better economy for everyone, and I want to thank them and ask you to give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. Would our friends from CASA please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for being here once again in the Senate. It's always wonderful to see you, and thank you for your advocacy and your work on behalf of many people who often do not have a voice. We're very grateful to you for providing that voice, and so we echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko, and I would ask everyone to please join me in sending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from CASA. Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, today we have a group visiting with us from the Rockbridge Highlands Realtors Group. They represent realtors in the counties of Allegheny, Amherst, Augusta, Botetourt, Highland, and Rockbridge. I think that our visitors are Tony Brown, Mary Beth Harris, Heather Hamilton, Kara Braddock, and Rona Bruce. I'd ask you to give them the warm greetings of the Senate.
Thank the Senator. Would our friends from the Rockbridge Highlands Realtors Association please rise in the gallery if you are able? There's somewhere here? Oh, right here. Very good. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Thank you for your tremendous leadership, for your great work as realtors, the largest professional association in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So you provide hope and opportunity to so many people. And I would ask everyone to please join me to extend the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of this body, joining us in the Senate today are individuals, including students, directors, etc., from the Virgie Binford Education Center, which is part of the Richmond Detention Center. Joining us are Dawn Barber, the director, Rhonda Gilmore, the deputy director, and Letter Jones, an assistant superintendent, and importantly, very importantly, 3 students from the Virgie Binford Education Center. They provide a comprehensive education to those students whose goal is to eventually matriculate from high school. You may remember that name, Mr. President, because the National Teacher of the Year, Rodney Robinson, was teaching and is teaching at Virgie Binford Education. So I'd ask you, Mr. President, and the body to give a warm welcome after your remarks, Mr. President, to those folks, including students, who have joined us from the Virgie Binford Education Center.
Thank the Senator. Would our young leaders and staff from the Virgie Binford Education Center please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for joining us here. You definitely deserve an applause. Go ahead. You definitely deserve that. And it's our last one for the morning. So I just wanted to thank you all so much for your tremendous leadership. We echo the eloquent and generous words of the junior senator from Richmond, Senator Morrissey, and so grateful for the work you do every single day to give hope to these wonderful young people. And we're proud of you all. You're doing great things and will do great things in your lives. Listen to these wonderful adults who love you and believe in you, and we all do as well. So I would ask everyone please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. Uncontested calendar. House bills on third reading.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that all House bills on third reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 1 through 4, that's House Bill 94 through 187, be advanced to their final passage in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, and that any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall House bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 1 through 4, House Bill 94 through House Bill 1187, be placed upon their final passage in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
House Bill 94, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 278, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 369, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendments.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
House Bill 778, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 949, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 1006, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 1137, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. House Bill 1187, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
Question is, shall the House bills pass in a block? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bills in the block pass.
Regular calendar, House Bill on third reading, House Bill 598, a bill relating to alcohol beverage control Annual mixed beverage performing arts facilities license. Reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that House Bill 598 pass, and speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 598 is exactly the same as Senate Bill 2012-212, which was my bill, and that bill passed this body unanimously. What the House bill does is it allows performing arts facilities that also sell food and have a capacity to serve at least 1,400 patrons to also serve mixed beverages during a performance. Again, this is a very straightforward bill, and I ask that the body pass it. Thank you so much.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 598? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 598 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. House Bill 598 passes.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 710, a bill relating to the regulation of sales of electricity under third-party sales agreements, etc. Reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor, and there's a floor substitute.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we reconsider the vote by which the bill was ordered to be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the bill was engrossed and advanced to its third reading be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we reconsider the vote by which the committee substitute was agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the committee substitute was agreed to be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the recommendation that it be rejected, I move the committee substitute.
Thank the senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Mr. President.
Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin.
Mr. President, I would ask the gentlelady, I'd like to ask the gentlelady if she'll yield.
Will Senator yield?
I will.
Senator yields, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask the question, if this substitute takes the requirements that are set forth in the bill and moves them up to 2030, that would affect the Virginia City Hybrid Energy Center in Wise County, Virginia.
Senator's the floor.
So this is the Solar Freedom Bill. This is the bill that would remove, under the committee substitute, it would remove 8 barriers to distributed solar in Virginia. Under the floor substitute that I'd like to get to, it shrinks that down to 5 because there was not agreement on the other 3, and we're moving forward where there's peace in the valley. I'm not sure that this affects that facility.
I thank the gentlelady.
And so the current motion is, with the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the floor substitute be waived.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the floor substitute be agreed to, and speaking to that.
Senator, it's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just explained the difference between the floor substitute and the committee substitute. Just to remind everybody which bill this is the Solar Freedom Bill, which removes 5 barriers to individuals, businesses, and localities to deploy mostly rooftop solar to serve themselves. This is not addressing solar that is used to generate energy for the public investor-owned utilities. And with that explanation, I move that the floor substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Lynchburg? Senator Peak rise. No worries. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor substitute? For what purpose is the senior senator from Virginia B, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, will the gentlelady yield for a question?
Will the Senator yield?
I will.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, if you can ask the gentlelady, how much will this increase the average ratepayer of a 2,200 square foot house?
Senator, has the floor.
So, Mr. President, there have actually been studies done of other states that have allowed distributed solar under the circumstances similar here that shows that it actually reduces rates for individual homes. And for some people, that is because with this bill, we are giving them the ability to deploy solar to power their home, and then that would mean they would pay a lot less for energy to light up their home.
Further question?
Mr. President, if you could, as a follow-up question, ask the gentlelady, what about for other people?
Will Senator yield for a second question?
I will yield.
Senator yields. Do you want to restate your question?
Yes, Mr. President. If you could ask the gentlelady, how much would that increase for other people who do not have solar?
Mr. President, I would answer the gentleman that this does not, I do not have any analysis to show that this will increase anyone else's rates.
Further question?
That's it, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, as I stated yesterday, we're putting a lot of additional costs that we're unsure of on the backs of our ratepayers, and this is just another one of those costs. And we're also saying it's in the public interest, which goes outside of the authority of the SEC, requiring, which normally would go through and say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost, this is what we recommend, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. President, I think after I added it up yesterday, we're somewhere around $500 to $1,000 per ratepayer per year. And I don't know about anybody else in this chamber, but I've got a lot of folks on fixed income.
Point of order.
And Mr. President, with those individuals on...
Are we speaking to the substitute or to the bill? I think this is the position of the bill is in second read, and the motion's on the substitute on the floor, correct?
Motion is on the substitute. That's correct.
Mr. President, I'm speaking to the substitute, which is currently in front of us. And, Mr. President, I'd just like to remind this body that we have a lot of individuals, at least in my district, who are on fixed incomes, and every time we do something like this, it impacts them tremendously, and they have to make life decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wondered if the gentlelady from Richmond would yield for a question or two.
Will the Senator yield?
I will.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question to the gentlelady is this: as I look on page 4 on lines 83 through 90, I have not had the opportunity to review the entire substitute. Can you tell me how those income qualifying customers, how that interplays with the balance of the bill, please?
Senator has the floor.
Yes, Mr. President. What this bill is trying to do is ensure that all customers, regardless of income, will have the ability to have rooftop solar, and not just a few that are higher income customers.
Further question?
Mr. President, if she would be so kind to yield again.
Senator yield?
Yes.
Senator yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, my question would be, is under the definition of income qualifying customers, is that resulting in any cost shift to the other ratepayers who may not fall within that definition?
Senator has the floor.
No.
Further question?
Mr. President, speaking to the substitute.
Senator has the floor.
perhaps in a little different context, but following up on the comments and questions by the senior senator from Virginia Beach, the State Corporation Commission just a day or so ago tried to do a cumulative quantification of the potential impact of various energy bills that we were passing. And it may not be in the same context, but I'm looking down here where they were talking about a range of impact on a monthly bill on the solar from $10 to $15 a month.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor substitute? Seeing none, the question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 710 pass and speak to the motion.
Does the senator first want to suspend the rules and dispense with the third reading?
I move that we suspend the rules and dispense with the third constitutional reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third constitutional reading be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The rules are suspended and the third constitutional reading is dispensed with. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking briefly, so with the floor substitute, there are 5 reforms that this bill makes. First, it raises from 1% to 6% the cap on the total amount of solar that can be net metered in a utility area. It makes third-party financing using power purchase agreements legal for all customers of investor-owned utilities and raises the cap, which we have reached already. It removes the restriction on customers installing a net metered solar facility larger than required to meet their previous 12 months demand. It raises the size cap for net metering on non-residential solar facilities and removes standby charges on residential facilities in APCO service territory. In response to a couple of the comments raised, and I think we're going to probably get into a larger conversation about costs on a different bill, but I just reiterate that an independent analysis of 11 other states with similar provisions have shown that the value of net metered solar exceeds the residential retail rate with a median value of 17 cents, and that these actually will help reduce customers' costs. But more importantly, we cannot shift away from fossil fuels and towards new renewables unless we remove the barriers to solar energy being deployed in Virginia. And this bill does this in a way that ensures that someone other than Dominion can deploy solar and that individuals, businesses, and localities can use solar to power their homes and businesses. And I ask that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall, rise?
Mr. President, speak briefly to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, make no mistake of what net metering does. Net metering takes the expense of somebody producing power and shifts it to their neighbors. Mr. President, what happens is the individuals that are using the wind or solar will pay less because they will be able to take advantage of what they're producing. But, Mr. President, what occurs is when those individuals are then selling it back to the grid, to everybody else, all the other customers, then they're selling it back at a higher rate, not necessarily the rate that it can be purchased for. So, Mr. President, if they're selling it back at 2 o'clock in the morning when electricity is really cheap, they're going to make a pretty big profit. So certainly it's better for them. So, Mr. President, as we're going through this, I think many of us think solar is a good idea, but don't necessarily think that the rest of the customers should pay for you to have solar or wind at your house or school.
Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Servell, rise.
The senator from Hanover yield for a question.
Will Senator yield?
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask the senator how a solar panel could generate electricity at 2 a.m.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I remind the gentleman of his bill from yesterday that we had a lengthy discussion on the ability to capture that energy and hold it in different ways. But it goes back into the grid, which we just required with your bill yesterday to then harness that in a multitude of different directions. Right. But, Mr. President, I would also remind the gentleman that not the only place that produces wind is this body. Also, we're dealing with turbines off this bill.
Further question?
Yeah, yield for one more question.
Will Senator yield?
Maybe.
Maybe. You have the floor.
Sure. Does the Senate realize that the bill we passed yesterday has to do with utility scale energy storage and not storage in individuals' homes, and that the senior senator from Richmond's bill has to do with solar on properties and not utility scale solar?
Senator has the floor.
Apples and oranges.
Mr. President, when the energy is produced, it doesn't just stay on that individual's property. It goes into the grid system, so it'll ultimately get to the gentleman's bill that passed yesterday.
Further question?
No question. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 710? Seeing none, the senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew that my motion that the bill pass. And again, in a recent hearing at the State Corporation Commission, an independent expert, Carl Rabaggio from Rabaggio Energy, testified that that large private investments should not bring an increase to customers' bills because, first of all, this is not that different from energy efficiency that reduces demand. When an individual puts solar on their home, that is less energy that the electric company has to provide. And so it's a little bit like in a different utility where wireless customers and landline customers change the demand on the network. So I just renew my motion that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 710 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 18.
Ayes 22, noes 18. Senate Bill 710 passes.
Senate Bill 34, a bill relating to the Department of Motor Vehicles, driver documents, and reexamination fees. We have a floor substitute.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. We need to get this bill in a posture where we can work on it a little bit. So, having voted on the prevailing side by which the bill was ordered to be engrossed and advanced to its third reading, I'd move that we reconsider that vote.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the bill was ordered engrossed and advanced to its third reading be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. And having voted on the prevailing side by which we adopted the committee substitute and the amendments, I would move that we reconsider the vote by which the amendments and the committee substitute were agreed to.
The question is, shall the vote by which the committee substitute and amendments were agreed to be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Mr. President, I would move that we waive reading of the floor substitute, unless we want to be here really late tonight.
Reject the committee sub. Okay.
We had to reject the committee substitute first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, yeah. With the recommendation to be rejected, I would move that we adopt the committee substitute and amendments.
Thank the senator. The question is, With the recommendation that they be rejected, shall the committee substitute and amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The committee substitute and amendments are rejected. The senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you. And now to save us some time, I move that we waive reading of this 190-page floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move the floor substitute and speaking to that motion.
Senator, it's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the bill you have before you is the bill having to do with driving privileges for undocumented immigrants in the Commonwealth. The substitute, the bill that came out of committee, was basically a bill that would repeal the 2004 legislation which required anybody applying for Virginia license to show legal presence. Now that we have Real ID, that statute is no longer really all that necessary. However, this bill is the same approach that you saw me introduce in 2016, 17, 18, and 19, which was considered by the Transportation Committee with a little bit of changes. So let me explain to you what this version does. This bill would create a temporary driving privilege card. So it would be a third credential. If we were to enact this law, basically you'd have a Real ID credential, then you'd have what I'll call the regular ID, and then you would have a temporary privilege card. This card will be good for 1 year. It will be renewable annually on the person's birthday. The fee would be $100 to apply. It would be $50 to renew, which covers the entire costs associated with the employees necessary to process all the people that are expected to show up looking for this. So this program, as in this substitute, would all be paid for by the applicants, not by anybody else. The meat of the bill is on lines 1920 through 1942, if you want to read it. But basically, in order to get one of these cards, you have to do a couple things. Number one, you have to prove your identity just like any other driver does. Number two, you have to show that you've paid Virginia income taxes in the last 12 months. Number three, you have to meet Virginia's auto insurance requirements like any other driver does. Number four, you have to prove residency in the Commonwealth like every other driver does. Then you have to pass a driving test and a written test. According to the DMV, the experience in other states is that many of these people have to take the test 3 times, 2 or 3 times in order to pass.
Mr. President.
What purpose, Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, rise?
I'd like to make a motion. And making a motion briefly. I'd like to move that we...
Hold on. Does the senator yield for a motion?
Let me explain the bill, and then he can make his motion.
I was just going to ask if we could take it by, because we've had 90-page sub in committee and 90-page sub now, and we're going to be here a long time, so we might be able to read it in between some of the times. And
Mr. President, I'll yield after I explain it. That might help people get through when they read it, and I'll be happy to take it by after I explain it. I think that might help everybody.
Okay. Senator has the floor.
Okay. So, as I was saying, to get the bill, you have to take the test, pay the fee, prove insurance, prove residency, prove your identity, just like anybody else. This card is also different from a regular license. If you look on lines 1049 through 51, there'll be a statement at the top that says, not valid for federal, voting, or public benefit purposes. And that's language that's been used in, I think, 15 other states that have adopted a similar provision, including Maryland and D.C. And then another important provision is lines 1943 through 68. Many of you may have read in the paper in the last week that the Department of Homeland Security took action against the state of New York for provisions that they put in their law. The language here is different than what New York did. New York basically said they're not going to give any information to ICE. This basically says that we're not going to give ICE bulk upload privileges, but if they make an individualized, if they or law enforcement or auto insurance make an individualized request, and they say we want to see the information for J. Chapman Peterson, birthday this, then they can respond to that request, but they're not going to give them a bulk list, and that's been vetted by numerous offices, and they think that language is sufficient to avoid the New York problem. And the last thing is the bill is effective January 1 of 2021. But that's what this sub does. Having explained it, I'd be happy to go by temporarily if everybody would like to read it a little further. But that's what it does.
And Senator, for what purpose, Senator from James City County, Senator Norman Rise? You okay? Okay, so Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline has made a motion to take it by temporarily. Okay, without objection, Senate Bill 34 will go by temporarily.
Senate Bill 473. Senate Bill 473, a bill relating to duties of drivers of vehicles approaching stationary vehicles displaying certain warning lights penalty.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Senator, has the floor.
And by way of explanation, Mr. President, we have had this pullover legislation for several years now, and drivers are used to this. And the pullover only applies to red and blue lights. This applies to amber lights as well. And these are tow truck drivers and people who provide traffic management services. These people also are a great danger. And if we're going to save lives, we need to pass this bill. It's already an infraction not to pull over. This would make it reckless driving, and the word would get out. People are used to this. They're used to the idea of pulling over. And this would simply save lives. People who are tow truck drivers are there in order to help the people whose car is in need of help to be towed. And those that are traffic management people are there to protect the people, to help the people who pulled off by the side of the road because they had to. And so, Mr. President, this does not infringe, this doesn't cover somebody wants to, Senator Peterson wants to stop by the side of the road to fix the car seat of his children or something like that. It doesn't apply to that. But it does apply to tow truck drivers, and it will save lives. So in the interest of saving lives, Mr. President, I urge the body to vote yes on this fairly simple bill, Senate Bill 473.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall rise?
Mr. President, speak briefly to the bill.
Senator, it's the floor.
Mr. President, we had this conversation yesterday, and I'll just remind the chamber, it is illegal today to not move over for the individuals, tow truck drivers, vehicles used in utilities, traffic management, other things. The difference that this bill does is make that a Class 1 misdemeanor. Mr. President, there are a myriad of vehicles that have yellow lights. And there, actually, as you look down through this section, there are 25 different categories, not vehicles, categories of vehicles that have yellow lights. So, Mr. President, some yellow lights, you can get a Class 1 misdemeanor, potentially lose your security clearance. Some yellow lights, you only get a fine, and you won't lose your security clearance. Mr. President, moving over is important, but it is just as important to move over whether I'm stopped on the side of the road, you're stopped on the side of the road. We are now making it a Class 1 misdemeanor for a non-governmental private individual that you don't move over. And Mr. President, I think having it as a traffic infraction is the right direction, particularly until we fix the statute. It's not an exact, the statute says you have to move over or reduce your speed to something that's relatively safe. There's no definition of safe, there's no speed limit, there's no amount of distance that you have to move over from. The statute needs to be addressed, and before we make this a Class 1 misdemeanor for other individuals that are not law enforcement or EMS or fire, we need to deal with that.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, the exact words that the Senator said from Hanover, that's my speech. I agree with you 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is a junior senator from Richmond City? Senator Morrissey rise.
Mr. President, would the gentleman from Hanover yield for a question?
Will the senator yield?
Mr. President, I've already talked more than I anticipated all day. Yeah, I would yield.
Senator yield. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask the gentleman, what traffic violation does he suggest would be appropriate? Because I tend to agree with him, not pulling over for a lay individual should not be a Class 1 misdemeanor that carries up to 12 months in jail. But during your comment, you mentioned there would be another traffic violation that would be appropriate. What is your suggestion?
Senator, the floor.
Mr. President, I'll answer the gentleman. If you look, and I'm reading on my technology, the current language that we are striking with this bill is a violation of any provision of this subsection shall be punished as a traffic infraction. And Mr. President, I am not 100% confident because I've not memorized the infraction tables, but I think it's a $125 fine for the violation of this traffic infraction. I do not recall whether it carries 3 or 4 negative demerit points, but it is one of those two negative demerit points. So, Mr. President, current law is negative points on your driving record and a fine if you're found guilty. But not jail time, not license suspension.
I thank the senator, Mr. President.
Thank the senator.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 473? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 473 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 11, noes 29.
The chair votes. No, it's not that close. Ayes 11, noes 29. Senate Bill 473 fails.
Senate Bill 717, a bill relating to redistricting, congressional and state legislative districts, standards and criteria, population data.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 717 pass, and speaking to the bill.
Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 717 would put redistricting criteria in the code to be followed regardless of whether the constitutional amendment passes. So no matter who draws the lines, I think we all agree it's more important the criteria they use to draw the lines. This bill puts in effect It enshrines in our code the principles of the Voting Rights Act and the 14th Amendment, not just in federal law, not just referencing those. It adheres to the one man, one vote principle, but allowing a deviation up to 5%, which is codifying current law. It ensures that these districts will be compact, contiguous, keep communities of interest together. One thing that is different from criteria we have seen in the past is it provides that for Virginia residents who are incarcerated for redistricting purposes, they will be counted at their last known address within the Commonwealth, not where they are incarcerated. And with that, I move the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 717?
Mr. President.
What purpose, Senator from Roanoke County? Senator Suderline rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a lot of you are aware, I had a substitute yesterday, but given the timing, we did not go forward with it. I also had a bill this year, but unfortunately didn't get to have that in P&E. For the last several years, on a bipartisan basis, we've pushed out different criteria that actually would have compactness requirements. The substitute I offered yesterday also would not have a 5% deviation. A 5% deviation is a misnomer. It sounds like there would only be a 5% difference allowed between districts. The reality is it's a plus or minus 10%. I would suggest that we are not following one man, one vote if we allow a 10% difference. That if there'll be larger districts next time, but last time we had about 200,000 people per district. If we had allowed a plus or minus 5% deviation last time, we could have had some districts that were only at 180,000 and other at 220,000 on day one of the redistricting. Under the map that was drawn 9 years ago, there was a Democratic majority here. We didn't use a plus or minus 5%. We used plus or minus 2%. I think by going to plus or minus 5%, we're getting far, far from one man, one vote. You'll see in the bill, it also talks about congressional districts. I won't yield at this time, but I'll happily yield in a minute or two. It talks about how the congressional districts are to be as practical, which the idea is basically they try to get down to one person, which I don't think that we need to do that. I think that we ought to have a low percentage, but plus or minus 5% is so far off from that. It's just not right with that. With compactness, this bill doesn't actually honor compactness. In committee, it was said by another member that without any real requirement, there is no requirement on compactness, which is exactly correct. Under the state constitution, we have a compactness requirement. But that requirement is so weak that I stand before you today representing half of Carroll, half of Wythe, Floyd, Salem, Roanoke County, but of the 5 magisterial districts, I represent splits of 4 of them. Every magisterial district is split except one. I represent half of Montgomery. I represent 3/4 of Franklin County, which is where the senator from Franklin lives in the other quarter. And I represent Bedford County, which is adjacent to Roanoke County. But to get to Roanoke County and Bedford, the parts I represent, you have to drive outside of my district for a good 30 minutes, or you have to go across Smith Mountain Lake, and you go through Franklin County. I would suggest that the constitutional provision on compactness is no requirement at all. And if we are going to put through a criteria bill that, again, continues down the same terms of compactness but doesn't actually honor local boundaries, we are going to end up with districts just like the one I represent. We're going to continue having districts that go from Arlington through 1.1 million people, Fairfax County, to get to Loudoun, when there's no reason that a district should have to stretch from Arlington through Fairfax to Loudoun. And it will be like that all across Virginia. I spent a lot of time trying to get the criteria bill, something that we could support on a bipartisan basis in the past. When I took it to the House of Delegates, I got 90 votes. And there's never been a Republican majority that big. I got almost every Democrat over there to vote for it. Then the governor vetoed it, and that had a chilling effect. And I think that we're then going to head to more partisan criteria. And one of the things that was also critical in that was we worked very hard to make sure that it would honor the Voting Rights Act, to make sure that we did not go back to the bad old days. I remember when I presented the bill the first time, and it was not as emphatic about voting rights in there, I had the senator from Chesapeake give me a very important, pointed message about when he came here to the Capitol and he saw a display of the first African-American legislators and how that was a point of pride for him, but how distressing it was to him that their successors were not elected anytime soon thereafter them, and that we went decades and decades until there were other African-American legislators here, and he did not want us to return to that. So I took my bill that had come out of committee on a 12-1 vote, and he was the only negative vote, and we worked very hard to amend it to make sure that we were emphatically clear about the Voting Rights Act and the 14th Amendment and other places. And we got it through, and I'm worried that we're now going to go the wrong way on this, on all three, on one man, one vote, on compactness, and on voting rights. And with that, I'm gladly yield to the senior senator from Fairfax.
What person, senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
Ask a question of the
Senator. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
I was curious about one of the things that you said, that if we had this 5%, in 2011, we and the district and average district was calculated at 200,000 people. That the districts could have been as small as 180,000 and as large as 220. And I realize that I've been out of school quite a while, but I'm just curious as to what kind of math you're using that 5% of 200,000 is 20,000 people.
Senator, has the floor.
Have I misspoke? I apologize. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but plus or minus 5 is 5,000. On 100,000, it'd be 10. So yeah, it'd be 210, 190.
That's a little different.
You're right. It would only be 20,000 deficit opposed to 40,000. So yes, I misspoke in that, but I would suggest that it's not right that one district start out with 20,000 more people than another district. At the congressional level, we'd never let that stand. At the House of Delegates, when they drew it, it was 1%. And I would point out that this chamber, under Democratic control, would not have allowed that to stand, and that's why I did plus or minus 2%. And now, for some reason, we're going to plus or minus 5%.
Further question? Okay.
Speak just very briefly to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
You heard what the Senator Suderline said about compactness and contiguous. In 2011, our legal consultant was a man named Jerry Hebert, who headed the Voting Rights Division, I think under 2 presidents, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican. All 40 of our bills, including the district that he serves in, all 40 of our districts, including the district that Senator Suderline serves in, met the compactness and contiguous clause of the Voting Rights Act. Fast forward about 4 or 5 years later, a group that's been active in the redistricting movement took our redistricting to court under the compactness and contiguous clause. They took it to a state court. And it went to the Virginia Supreme Court, who I think it was 6-1 or 7-1 or whatever the number was. I know that only one person decided, I think, against it. They upheld our redistricting, that it was within the compactness and contiguous clause of the Virginia Constitution. So it met the requirements of the Voting Rights Act, met the requirements of the Virginia Constitution. I don't know what your gripe is.
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
So I wasn't planning to speak a second time, but that's exactly my entire point, is that I represent a district that splits up all these counties, that towns as big as Hillsville, Wytheville, Christiansburg, Rocky Mount are all divided. Christiansburg's divided in such a way that I represent East Christiansburg and West Christiansburg, but most people in Christiansburg are represented by the senator from Roanoke City. I would suggest that that's not compactness. I would suggest that the fact that I represent part of 3 different congressional districts and go into 3 different area codes, and that when my legislative district committee meets every 4 years to nominate me, the people from Bedford and Carroll always think it's so great to meet each other because they've never been involved at any event together before because they live so far away from each other, even though they're both involved in the Republican Party because they're on different congressional districts. My point exactly was our compactness standard in the state constitution is no compactness standard at all. To say that we have compactness when we have districts like mine, or basically I could pick out probably 37 of the 40 districts in here I don't think are very compact. It's tough to argue that we have a compactness standard. So the Supreme Court said that it was compact under the Constitution because there's no compactness standard. That's it.
For what purpose, Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I just want to make a couple clarifying points. I think the members of this body should understand exactly what it is that you're voting for, because some of the conversation is a little tedious and a little down in the weeds. We have had many members in this body who year after year after year, and this was 100% bipartisan, brought legislation for redistricting reform. And we had outside coalitions who came to us year after year and said, we want to accomplish this. And there were just one or two baseline criteria that they asked for. And one of those was criteria that would make it a priority to respect local government boundaries. That was really simple. And I know that the senator from Southern Fairfax worked a long time to thread the needle and to put this together and to work on criteria that would be the kind of criteria that he could put forward and would get the votes that was needed to leave this body. And I also know that it is the case that when someone comes to you and says, this criteria is going to be really good and maybe better for one side than from the other, I just want to caution you that the clean criteria, in the end, we will all be subject to this criteria. The cleaner the criteria, the better. And in this case, the criteria omits one really important point. And you will all hear from your local governments when this redistricting is done. And we will all hear from reformers who thought we passed criteria that was the pure reform criteria, and this simply lacks that highest priority, which includes respecting local government boundaries. And when the senator from Roanoke County was referencing that, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about that notion that you can take your one county and you can divide that up multiple ways. And the notion is that you don't want to dilute the representation of any one community. They'd like to have one senator or as few House members as possible that they can go to. And so, again, I understand how much work went into this. I understand how complicated it is. I understand that it's tedious and not everybody understands, and that there are lots of coalitions who have to agree on this. But I would just urge the members of the body to consider what it is that you're voting for, and that priority placed on that piece of this criteria isn't there. I would also, just to echo the comments of the senator from Roanoke County, that the deviation of 5%, that's a larger deviation than we have had in the past. And then also his reference to the Voting Rights Act. What we have in this criteria is something different than we have had in the past. And in the past, we have had the language that strictly adhered to the Voting Rights Act, and that was language that would generate majority-minority districts. And in this case, we have language that is slightly different, and what you have is an influence district. And that's something different. And finally, something that wasn't discussed on the Senate floor, and you should just understand, so you know what you're voting for, and that has to do with the prison population. And the legislation has something that I think many of you will maybe come to understand better later as this criteria may be applied to your district. But the prison population will be counted very differently than we've counted it in the past. And we've always done a pure census. And we've always said we vote people where they are. And for the first time ever, we will do something known as prison gerrymandering, and we will not count the prison population where they are. So I just want the members of the body to be aware of what it is that you're voting for, because believe me, this is going to have a huge, huge impact on you at some later point. And you will perhaps have maybe wished the criteria had been somewhat different. And you will also hear about it from your local governments. So I would encourage you to maybe reconsider, and perhaps we would be wise to change one or two pieces of that criteria. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Northern Chesapeake? Senator Spruill rise.
Rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, looking at the criteria, the gentleman from Roanoke is telling the truth. I had a problem with that, so what he said to me was the truth. As far as looking at what happened with the Supreme Court, that when I was in the House, these same bills type came up. And when it went to the Supreme Court, they subpoenaed me to come to D.C., but because I spoke in favor of the opposition, because I knew that the lines were drawn by Delegate Chris Jones and myself to favor minorities, those in compacting districts. On my wall, I have a picture of 11 or 12 blacks that were elected from 1887 to 1888, one term. After that one term, not another black was elected in this place until 1967. Where I'm from, I don't care about y'all criteria. I don't care about the Democrats and Republicans. What I care about 40 years from now, there's a black person in this General Assembly. That's what I want. I'm not favoring no parts of these groups who come and talk to me about this and that one. I don't care about that. My thing is this, is to make sure that it doesn't be another 1888 to 1967 for black folks to be in here. I have talked with Senator McCollum and all. They say, we got this protection. This is in there. I don't believe it. So you ask me how I'm going to vote, I'm not going to do anything. I don't care who put it in. If it does not protect and make sure that when I die and my grandkids come here, I don't want them to say that there's a black person on the wall in 2020 or 19, whatever the year might be. My concern is to make sure, if you want to say compacting district, so be it. If not compacting, so be it. My concern is to make sure that 40 years from now, there's a black person in this General Assembly, don't care whether they be Republican or Democrat. I'm looking out to make sure that black folks are here 40 years from now.
Thank the senator. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 717? Seeing none, the senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
First of all, the reason that all of the members of the General Assembly who were elected 150 years ago then left, and we didn't get another one until 1968, was not because of redistricting. It was because of the Constitutional Convention of 1902 that disenfranchised African Americans. Period. There was no opportunity for redistricting between when those people got elected and when they didn't leave. They left because the votes weren't there to elect them, and they were being threatened if they ran for office. Point number one. Point number two. The difference between minority influence districts and minority districts, the House of Delegates shows right now that with minority influence districts, you actually can have more minorities elected because you are not packing them all into one district and therefore diluting their voting power in other districts. That's what happened with the House maps last year. That's why they were struck down by the Supreme Court. And when they were redrawn, we currently have more African Americans both in Congress and in the House because of that, because of the maps that were drawn that didn't pack African Americans into smaller districts to meet a magic 55% black voting age population. Jurisdictional boundaries. What is important is that we keep communities of interest together. In some areas, jurisdictional boundaries are accidents of what happened when there was annexation. There are neighborhoods that cross jurisdictional boundaries between Richmond and Eastern Henrico that but for a sign, you would have no idea. The communities of interest in those neighborhoods are the same. This bill prioritizes keeping communities of interest together. With compactness, compactness is there. But compactness cannot be more important than protecting the rights of minority communities to elect the candidate of their choice. These criteria are not written in a vacuum. There was something called redlining. Redlining makes it difficult to both meet compactness purely and the principles of the Voting Rights Act and the 14th Amendment. Sometimes you have to make a choice. The deviation. Under federal law, whether we have criteria or not, you can go up to 5%. That is all this bill says. It doesn't mandate that we go to 5%. Probably they will pick 2%. And I think there's room to negotiate on that because all we were trying to do was say, here's the maximum under federal law where you can go, so let's put that maximum in these criteria. And with that, I ask that we pass the bill.
For what purpose does Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Mr. President, would the gentlelady yield for a question?
Will Senator yield?
Yes.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the gentlelady from Richmond, this is not an area that I'm proficient in, but as I read this section, I really want to know what this sentence means. And it's at the end of paragraph 3 under 24.2-304.04. And it says, nothing in this subdivision shall establish a right to have members of a racial or language minority group elected in numbers equal to their proportion in the population.
Senator, has the floor.
I would answer that basically is restating what the case law is under the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act does not and was never intended to guarantee a particular number of minority candidates. The Voting Rights Act was intended to ensure that minority populations have an opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice.
Another question, Mr. President.
Further question, Senator Yield? Senator Yield?
Yes.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
I asked the general, I'm just a country lawyer. I'm not one of these sophisticated ones, but this sentence, the way I read it, intentionally discriminates against certain races and minority groups. Is that not true?
No.
Senator, has the floor.
No. What this is saying is, which is what the Voting Rights Act and the 14th Amendment provide, is you are not guaranteeing that any particular racial group of any kind will be elected strictly by proportion of what they are in the population. It's simply restating what is the jurisprudence under the Voting Rights Act and the 14th Amendment.
Further question? No further question. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 717? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 717 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 19.
Ayes 20, noes 19. Senate Bill 717 passes.
Senate Bill 253, a bill relating to deeds of trust, fiduciary duties.
Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we've heard this bill debated. We've heard it explained. I move passage of it.
Senator, has the floor.
And I would say to the members that this bill has, as I said, been explained and debated. And yesterday, my good friend, the senator from Fairfax City, had a clever argument in which he compared the bill through a Christmas movie that has the villainous Mr. Potter and the good character George Bailey. Now, I would ask the members to decide in your own mind whether or not I more resemble the villainous Mr. Potter, who was actually Lionel Barrymore of Philadelphia, or do I remind you more of the character George Bailey, who is actually Jimmy Stewart with his distinctive drawl? I hope that you'll pass the bill.
For what purpose is Senator from Fairfax City? Senator Peterson, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respond to the senator from Bedford Falls. I just make 2 points. One, no man is a failure who has friends. 2, no trustee should be scared of a fiduciary duty to a man in foreclosure. And that's all I have to say.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 253? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 253 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 13.
Ayes 26, noes 13. Senate Bill 253 passes.
Senate Bill 183, a bill relating to war memorials for veterans.
Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 183 pass, and speaking to that.
Senator, it's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 183 simply gives local governments the authority to do what they will with locally owned war memorials. The legislation recognizes that citizens should decide what their communities look like. The legislation also provides that localities have the authority to make decisions about all of its locally erected war memorials. Each community should have the freedom to determine which parts of its history to honor and preserve through public art. If a locality decides to remove a war memorial or monument, this legislation ensures that there is an opportunity to preserve the historical importance of that monument. So again, I move that the legislation pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 183? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 183 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. Senate Bill 183 passes.
Senate Bill 890, a bill relating to transportation.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move the passage of 890, and speaking to that.
Senator, it's the floor.
I won't get too deep, and I spent quite a bit of time explaining the substitute, which is essentially is the bill before you now. Just briefly, and like I said, I got into a lot of the details, but if you want to ask questions, that's fine. The two major things of the bill as it stands and as it started out ensures that we have sustainability funding for our transportation projects. The two major items of projects are, one is the I-81 and the funding to sustain that. And number two is the bridge, the long bridge across the Potomac, which will enable more trains to run, quite frankly, from Manassas all the way into D.C. That will take traffic off of 66. And it also has in there, by the way, those who live in that corridor or represent people in that corridor, the money raised in that corridor will be spent in that corridor. It changes the gas tax to cents per gallon. We had some that were based on a percentage of the wholesale price, and the wholesale price since 2013, when it was implemented, has dropped dramatically. It raises the original bill, if you remember, had 3 4-cent increases, then followed by attaching a CPI to that, so we wouldn't be dealing with this all the time. This will attach it after 8 cents a gallon increase. We will still be, when all is said and done, we will still be far below the national average. The other major thing is imposes the regional, and for the lack of a better description, metro tax that currently Tidewater, Northern Virginia, and the I-81 corridor have it. It spreads that statewide to all the various transportation districts. And the money that is raised in those transportation districts, and this is important to remember, will be spent in that district. So that's basically what it does. And just to give you an idea, if you think somebody will cross the border to maybe get a better deal, North Carolina is at over 36 cents. West Virginia 35.7, Maryland 36.7. National average is 36.3. Will be somewhere between 30 and 31 cents. So with that, I would again move passage of the transportation bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from Roanoke County? Senator Suderline rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senior senator from Fairfax yield for a question?
Senator Yields. Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As demonstrated a few moments ago, math is hard for me. But I've got a question about the gas tax, which is an honest question. I understand we have different policy views on this, but in 2013, the gas tax went up in my region, in the western part of the state. Then a few years later, it wasn't generating as much revenue as was hoped. So Senator Wagner brought legislation to try to shore that up as we go back and forth between a cents or percentage. And then in 2019, there was an amendment on a late bill that the governor, again, increased the fuel tax in my region. So it's essentially increased 3 times since 2013. And it appears it's going to increase again this year with passage of this bill. With the fuel tax being a diminishing source, I understand there's other things in your bill, but do you anticipate that the fuel tax will need to be raised again in the next 5 years?
Senator's the floor.
To give you an honest answer, no. And here's why. Currently the 16.1 cent state tax, that way I'm not talking about the regionals, the state tax produces about $740 million for road maintenance, okay? This 8 cents that we're adding will add about $375 million more to maintenance. And as I pointed out, in the 80s, we had a policy, or VDOT had a policy, of resurfacing subdivision streets every 6 years, as well as secondary roads, which you have a lot of in your area. Now it's 15 to 16 years. That's what's happened to it. It won't bring it back to every 6, but it'll get it pretty close to that. And then we're also attaching the CPI. I was told, Mr. President, and I say to the senator from Roanoke County, that had Jerry Beliles, former Governor Beliles, once remarked that the biggest mistake that he made in that 1986 special session was not indexing the gas tax. Had he done that, this bill wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be standing up on this, and neither would you. Our gas tax would have been 37 cents a gallon. And over the years, we'd have had billions of dollars more to do the work that's needed in my area and yours. So this attaching it to the CPI will solve problems for years to come. And, you know, will we ever, get to the transportation system that they have in Europe? Probably not without a major, major change, and I mean major at the federal level. But I don't think we're going to need we will not need to come back in the next 5 years and redo this.
Further question?
Just speaking briefly.
Senator has the floor.
I thank the senator for his answer. I hope he's right. It just seems like almost every other year it's being addressed, and I think I have the same concerns a lot of other folks, that regardless of the CPI tie, it's just a diminishing source of revenue. And I know you've got some other components in the bill, but that's something that just makes me concerned that we continue to go down that path.
I would point out one other thing, is that we've and we're aware of the diminishing, fuel tax results, but to offset that, what we're doing is we've attached a fee that'll be in your registration bill that will be based on what the average car gets and how much they drive a year, and you will pay up to 85% of what that so-called average would be for gas tax. Total electric car is going to pay more, but the asphalt does not know that you're driving a fuel-efficient vehicle. What the asphalt knows, there's a heavy car on it. Just to give you an example, the dimensions on a Toyota Camry, the external dimensions on a Toyota Camry are roughly the same as the Tesla Model S, which is one of their bigger full version of a full-size car. So the dimensions are roughly the same. The lightest Tesla Model S, and it depends on the battery you get in there, is 1,100 pounds more than that Toyota Camry. And in fact, the Toyota Model S is heavier than a Ford F-150, even a Ford four-wheel drive F-150. So, we're aware of that, and we're trying to deal with it through this additional fee.
Mr. President.
What purpose, Senator from Williamsburg?
Gentleman yield for a question.
Well, Senator Yield. Senator
Mr.
Yield,
President, I asked the gentleman, if I missed it, I apologize. But what amount of impact, dollar-wise, will this have on a driver with the next two phases of increase?
Senator,
with what?
The dollar amount impact that it would have.
Well, you know what your registration fee is every year. It'll go up, and you'll get that mileage, that the tax adjustment. Depending,
Mr.
car,
President,
you'll get less. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, sir. The estimated gas tax increase. Do you know how much dollar amount cost it would be?
Probably anywhere from 100 to 120, $130 a year. But remember, you're driving on the road.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, it'll be a little more than that. But right now, a car, just for the sake of numbers, if a car gets 20 miles to the gallon and drives 20,000 miles a year, that would be 1,000 gallons. And the tax, the state tax on that, the straight state tax is $160. That'll probably go up about half of that. So it'd be somewhere between $60 and $80 a year. Won't be very much. And with that, I'd move. There's no more questions.
We have a few more. Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just rise to speak briefly to the bill.
The floor.
The one thing to be grateful for here is the fact that gasoline didn't go to the price that we envisioned in 2013. We thought it would be something in the $4 to $5 range. It didn't get there. As I looked around last couple of days, it was in the $2 and teen range. And secondly, the cars are getting better gas mileage. While that's to Senator Suderline's point, that's difficult because it's a diminishing return. At the same time, a lot of folks are going to be they're going to be helped in paying for this tax by the fact that their car gets better gas mileage. I just bought a vehicle. I've never had a vehicle that went above about 28 miles per gallon. Just bought one, and it's a hybrid. It's getting 43. So I'm doing well. Nobody likes to raise taxes, but the roads need our attention, and I think this is a good bill, and I urge us to support it.
What purpose, Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Just wanted to observe that you'll see on the calendar I voted against this bill in Senate Finance and Appropriations, but the bill that we have in front of us now on the floor is not that bill. The substitute is a product of a significant amount of negotiation. I would certainly thank the senior senator from Fairfax. The senator from Southeast Fairfax was involved, the administration, and others, including the senior senator from Virginia Beach, who offered some amendments yesterday that I think the senator from Fairfax has agreed that some of those will be incorporated, and he's had a very thoughtful investigation of the bill. So the bottom line, Mr. President, is as it has evolved, I now certainly support the measure and hope others will as well.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, speaking to the bill.
Senator, it's the floor.
First, I wanted to thank the senior senator from Fairfax with working on this bill. We in Hampton Roads, and as I've gone through this bill, we've looked at Hampton Roads, Richmond, and the western part of the state. And we're still hoping for parity before this is finished. But I do want to thank the senior senator from Fairfax for doing two or three things. Most importantly, from my standpoint, when we're looking at the bond issue, we're running it through the MEI committee, which will look at that. They're also the committee that look at every economic development project that goes through the Commonwealth. And I'm very thankful for that, as well as 2 or 3 other things in there. I still believe we have a few more issues that we have to negotiate out and work out. And the senior senator from Fairfax has been instrumental in helping with that. We plan on continuing those conversations until we can get there. When it comes to the Passenger Rail Authority, there's still a few sticking points that I have on that I'm just not willing to give up on at this point in time, but we are definitely moving in the right direction when it comes to negotiating that. There are some policy concerns that I have when we have a member of the administration chairing and overseeing something that the legislature has stood up and has legislative members from the on that committee. And I just think that if the legislature stands up a committee or an authority, as we have done across the Commonwealth, that within that authority we should have the planning districts making the recommendations of who will chair it, and it should be amongst those individuals. And I think that's a policy decision I'm still not willing to give up on yet, as well as parity across the state, Mr. President. And I'm not talking about just Hampton Roads, but Hampton Roads, Richmond, and Southwest. And I'm pretty confident we're going to get there, but Mr. President, we're not there yet, and I look forward to continuing negotiations until we can get there. And again, I'm very thankful for the senior senator from Fairfax for his assistance with getting us as far as we are, but we're not quite there yet, and happy to continue working on it to get us there. Thank you very much.
For what purpose, Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds rise.
Speak briefly to the bill, Mr. President. Mr. President, the calendar will reflect that I voted against this bill in committee. And I voted against this bill in committee in large part because the bill we passed last year raising the gas tax in 81 corridor was imposed also on counties and planning districts in the 81 corridor, regardless of whether or not the road went through those counties. The western part of my district, Highland, Bath, and Allegheny people have been subject to that tax. And I want to thank the Secretary and the Secretary of Transportation and the Senior Senator from Fairfax County for working with me to make sure that the money that's paid in those counties goes to the Transportation District, the Stanton District, where they're served and where their needs are more likely to be more directly met. Other than that, this is a transformational sort of piece of legislation. It fixes a lot of the inequities that were created in the 2013 legislation, and it makes historic investments in passenger rail, and I hope that we can all get together and vote for this bill.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 890? Seeing none, the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, first of all, I want to thank you all for your patience on this. You've heard me say numerous times that taxes do not drive, and I can't be emphatic enough about this, the price of this particular product. Just went online, 3A's, state by state average for regular unleaded gasoline. Keep in mind that North Carolina's gas tax is 18 cents higher currently than Virginia's state tax. As of February 11th, which was just today or yesterday, our price of regular unleaded statewide average was $2.21.4 cents. $2.21.4 cents. North Carolina, whose tax is 18 cents higher than ours, was $2.24.5 cents. Okay? In other words, a 3-cent difference, even though their tax is 18 cents higher. This is this product is different than any other product on the market. And, you know, I gave an example of the other day of what happened in 2013 when we went back to 11.1 cents, and then, but with a proviso in there that if the Internet Sales Tax Act wasn't passed by Congress, and they didn't, although the U.S. Supreme Court later took care of that, If they didn't do that by December 31st, 2015, gas tax would go up 5 cents a gallon to 16 cents a gallon, where it is now, 16.1 to be exact. So on December 31st, I and everybody else in at least in my region, got a 5-cent increase to reflect the increase in the gas tax. 2 nights later, I got a 7-cent decrease in the wholesale price of gasoline. 7 cents, which means that the gas was now cheaper after the tax went up than it was before. That points out the difference and the fluctuations in this market. With that, I would hope that you all would support the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 890 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 17.
Ayes 23, noes 17. Senate Bill 890 passes.
Senate Bill 972, a bill relating to vehicle registration fees, Public Safety Trust Fund.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Senator has the floor.
And by way of explanation, Mr. President, we've all seen how the state police have protected us here in Richmond recently and all over the Commonwealth. This bill gives the state police a much-needed raise. They're losing people because of the salaries. You've seen the figures. This is a very important bill. This bill adding $4 to the registration fees. This will raise $27 million, which is what the state police need. So, Mr. President, I think everybody's heard this bill. I hope we have a lot of green lights, Mr. President, and with that, I'll move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Speak the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate this bill. I hate this bill. I hate this bill. But you know what? I love my troopers more. Truly, this bill should not be here. Truly, this is a general fund responsibility of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And if we do love our troopers, then they should have been taken care of, not through some gimmick bill, which, by the way, I'm going to support, but as a regular budget item. These folks have needed this help for a long time, and I hope you'll support this. It's very rare that I'll get up and support a spending issue like this, but our state police are in critical need, and I hope that we'll pass the bill.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteff, rise?
Mr. President, speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I also believe that we should support our state police, not in a bill such as this where we add a fee to cover the cost of our state police. I think this is something that should be considered as part of the core role of government, safety and security of our citizens. I think the state police should be included in our baseline budget. Mr. President, when we're talking about a $200 billion budget, and we're talking about what's going to be generated here, about $25 to $27 million, I really don't think we should be slighting our state police by not including them in our baseline budget. Mr. President, I think that truly we should be doing this in our baseline budget. But short of that, again, I believe in our state police, and I believe safety and security of this Commonwealth is one of the things we definitely have to support. And if we're not going to support it in the base budget, then we're going to have to support it this way. However, with that said, Mr. President, I'm going to support this bill, but next year, if no one else does it, I'll carry the amendment to put this in the baseline budget and go back and reduce the fee on this. Thank you very much.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
I've met with the superintendent of state police, and this just isn't taking money and giving it to the state police to increase their salaries. There's a pay plan involved here that exists within the current pay band structure that we have that they'll be able to slot people and solve the compression problem and the fact that you have people of higher rank making less than people with lower rank. It's going to fix the system. It's not just giving them more money. More money isn't going to solve the problem. A structured pay system is what the entire state needs, and this is a great way of finding out how to do that. It is a step forward, I think, to return to something that will incentivize people to work for the Commonwealth of Virginia and to cut down on the crisis we have with state police in terms of retention and recruitment. So this is a great step forward, and I urge everyone to support the bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 972? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 972 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 31, noes 7.
Ayes 31, noes 7. Senate Bill 972 passes.
Senate Bill 971, a bill relating to the gaming in Virginia.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
This is the bill that deals with the so-called gray machines. These machines are proliferating by the thousands all over Virginia, and each and every one of them is taking money from our lottery and therefore taking money from public education. They're currently totally unregulated and untaxed, and this bill bans them. It has several points. First, it defines skill games, which is the official name of gray machines. And they say that these skill machines are illegal gambling. It excludes family entertainment centers from the definition. And I hope it'll be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in support of Senate Bill 971.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I associate myself with the gentlelady's comments. She and I have had the opportunity to work together on this legislation. The important thing is we considered a number of alternative approaches to it, including various regulatory impositions. Ultimately, we came to the conclusion that this was the cleanest, most financially efficient way to deal with it, and I would encourage the body to support the legislation.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to SB 971.
Senator has the floor.
You know, Mr. President, you may remember yesterday I thought I was doing a great thing because we could take the revenues from these skill games, make these skill games licensed through charitable organizations, limit the number that could be there, and have $500 million, $500 million to save our schools that already exist, fix the roads, and provide a safe learning environment for our children throughout the Commonwealth. And I guess I was surprised because I really didn't know. You know, when we started this conversation, I really didn't know that we were just going to exclude one type of gambling in favor of another type of gambling. And so last night I spent a lot of hours going through this, looking at all this other stuff, you know, so I could learn more about them and figure out maybe why we hated them so much. And I couldn't find really a reason why we hated them so much, except we've made a decision. We've made a decision. And that decision is that we prioritize the business interests of those people out of state and Las Vegas over small Virginia business owners. These business owners right now have these games, and it has changed their economic futures. Now, it's not just in a bar or a restaurant, and it's saving those people. It's employing thousands of people. But guess what? These machines, turns out, are made in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So then I started looking around even in my local area and talked to some people. and had some people talk to some other people. And Norman Wall of Tommy's Amusements in Martinsville said skill games have allowed him to pay off his debts and get ahead and make his business successful. And that's my area. Rodney Wilson of C&L Amusements in Hopewell stated that skill games have helped him add vehicles to his fleet, and it's helping their business. Southern Amusement, another company, was able to hire 25 employees and pay them full health insurance due to these skill games. Another owner of an establishment called Cully's in Portsmouth said skill games have brought in new customers, and I've been able to give raises to my employees. In fact, I found online, so it must be true, that one skill game manufacturer here in the Commonwealth of Virginia has donated over $1.7 million to charity. These donations helped Virginia food banks provide food and sustenance to the needy. Donations helped local Ronald McDonald houses in Richmond buy a new custom van to transport patients. Helped the Orange County Health Clinic near Charlottesville to provide free health care to those patients in need. Children's Hospital in Norfolk benefited as well with their preemie program. 2,300, turns out, Virginia and small businesses use these skill games, and it helps them keep open, stay open, and thrive. These are small Virginia businessmen and women. Let me say that one more time. Small Virginia businessmen and women, not Las Vegas, not Atlantic City, not outside state interests, which are now about to invade the Commonwealth of Virginia with their determination of how this state should act when it comes to gambling. Now, I've said it before, I wasn't really interested in the casino gambling in the areas when they were offering them up, because it seemed to me like a town like that I represent, Mr. President, of Danville, was kind of thrown in there so that Bristol could get a casino and Portsmouth and other areas, and say, well, we'll put one in Danville. Well, I'm very proud of the city council in Danville and the people that have worked there, the EDA, because they have been building an economy brick by brick, a new foundation, have really brought in business. And I had said to them, you know, I think a casino might be like throwing up a white flag over top of the city and saying, we're not going to go the long route. We're going to take the short money. But now, looking at this issue, what I see, Mr. President, is in banning skill games in this bill, it'd be one thing if there was a lot of revenue generated from casinos that were going to go to schools and do other things, but no, quite frankly, that's not going to happen. All this money is going to go out of state. They like to say how they're employing jobs and people, but those median jobs, we know what those will be. We've had, actually, through skill games, have an opportunity to regulate them, I put the cap at 25%, we could go higher, pay for the very needs that we have while they're here, solve our problems with our crumbling schools, and actually help thousands of Virginians with their jobs and thousands of Virginians with their businesses. I was looking again, Mr. President. 2,300 small businesses utilize this form of income. We have hundreds and hundreds of family-sustaining jobs. If we ban these skill games, not regulate them, one, we're cutting ourselves off of money, because for 3 years, as I said yesterday, maybe 4, that's the quickest a casino is ever going to go up, because you got to do the referendum, and then you got to build it, and that's at least 3 years to build. I don't know any casino, I couldn't find anyone that was built in less than 3 years. So, Mr. President, we have an opportunity to capture some revenue. We could even put a sunset on it. If it doesn't work, then we can put it out. Or when the casino's open, then that would be the end. But no, we're going to throw this revenue away. $154 million of revenue and direct economic impact for Virginia in 1 year, year one. But we're going to throw that away and give the municipalities nothing, the children nothing. We're going to still have leaky roofs, mildew coming through, children getting sick, teachers getting sick, buildings falling apart, ceiling tiles falling on children's heads as they ate lunch. A true story. Because we've chosen Las Vegas over Virginia. We are missing an incredible opportunity here to do it all. Because if you're going to do gambling, let's do gambling. If you're going to legalize it, then get the benefit from it. Don't put it in just here and here and here. Allow all regions to prosper from it. And ultimately for the children to benefit most. Even on my plan yesterday, charitable gaming would have brought hundreds of millions of dollars to those in need. But instead, we've chosen Vegas. We, Virginia, by this bill banning skill games and picking casinos, are choosing the hard rock over those that have the hard luck. I think we should, as we progress here, we're not over yet, we should think about this through and make sure that we try every way possible to include this as a part of your grander casino and gambling plan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Arlington? Senator Favola, rise.
Speak to the measure, Mr.
Senator, has the
President.
floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm speaking in favor of the bill, and I can give you two reasons why. I was doing my newsletter this weekend to inform voters of some of the issues that the General Assembly is facing. So I did a little research on this bill, thinking much like Senator, has the patron mentioned, this is not a good idea, and I wanted to explain to voters why. There are groups out there that research the probability of winning at these slot machines. It is less than half of 1% if an individual plays the same machine 500 times. So what that tells me is people who are really willing to risk their dollars on an opportunity to cash out or to gain a reward are oftentimes those who are least able to spend their dollars. And I think as a Commonwealth, we should set some kind of criteria or standards or the ability to at least control and monitor who might be playing these machines in some fashion or another, and I don't know what that might look like. But to allow slot machines just anywhere, I think is a great disservice. I think it sort of sends the message that you can win something, just come here and play, when in fact, that individual has a very, very, very slim chance of winning. And I don't feel that it's appropriate for the state to offer that opportunity. So because of that, I'm going to support the bill. Thank you.
For what purpose, Senator from Prince William County? Senator McPike, rise.
Mr. President, speaking in favor of the bill, and I'll be very brief, I hear that Las Vegas odds of us getting out before 6 o'clock, according to my good friend and Senator Marsden, are increasing. And so just to maybe offer a little point of contrast to the Senator from Franklin, his vision he described actually provides essentially slot machines on every corner. And that's not a vision that I share with the Senator, although I think his intentions are well and good. But I think that alternate to it is important. We had several bills that constructed exactly what alternatives, as the Senator from New Kent indicated, or James City rather, indicated. I think we assessed many different alternatives, including from full slot to great machines and others. And I think we've come to the conclusion that everybody wants their own monopoly based on their own ideas to provide for slot machines on every corner. I think the prudent decision is to support this bill and ban and have a vision of Virginia a little bit different from that of the Senator from Franklin, which is not having slots on every corner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Nope, good. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 971?
Mr.
Seeing none, Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Just to conclude, casinos are at a very different stage in Virginia than gray machines are. Casinos have been studied for years. There's been careful planning. They're being regulated and taxed. And none of that applies to gray machines. So I hope you will vote for the bill.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 971 pass? All in favor of the motion record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 31, noes 9.
Ayes 31, noes 9. Senate Bill 971 passes.
Senate Bill 1038, a bill relating to transit funding in the Hampton Roads region.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. 7 years ago, the General Assembly made a very deliberate and conscious decision to exclude any funding for transit in Hampton Roads when HB 2313 was enacted. I introduced Senate Bill 1038 to address the dire need for dedicated funding to support high-efficiency bus transit in Hampton Roads. First, it takes the existing provisions of the code related to transit planning, including those provisions specific to Hampton Roads, and it ties them all together under the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization to ensure a system is driven by sound planning. Mr. President, third, it draws up upon two regional transportation revenue sources currently used in Northern Virginia but not available in Hampton Roads. And so with that explanation, Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1038? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1038 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 18.
Ayes 22, noes 18. Senate Bill 1038 passes.
Senate Bill 67, a bill relating to reporting lost or stolen firearms civil penalty.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 67 pass. And speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill would require anyone who owns a firearm to report the loss or theft within 24 hours to law enforcement. This is a bill that has been requested by law enforcement, particularly the chief of the city of Richmond, for several years to help stem the flow of illegal firearms and straw purchases, and I ask that we pass the bill.
For what purpose, Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise.
Mr. President, speak briefly against the bill.
Senator, the floor.
Mr. President, if this bill passes, firearms owners will become the only owners of products other than shopping carts to be criminalized as a consequence of being a victim of a crime. I would urge members to vote no.
Thank the Senator. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 67? Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just note this does not make it a crime. It's a civil penalty, and actually owners of explosive devices who do not report also face a similar penalty under current law. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 67 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 18, noes 21.
Ayes 18, noes 21. Senate Bill 67 fails.
Senate Bill 323, a bill relating to the Board of Education, high school graduation requirements, certain substitutions.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 323 pass. And speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this is a relatively simple and straightforward bill. What it deals with is students who have an IEP, individualized education program, that allows them, if they're pursuing an advanced diploma, to be able to substitute 2 credits for computer science classes for 2 years of a foreign language. There are many students who have various disabilities who have extraordinary difficulty learning a language, and the majority of students who have IEPs who pursue an advanced diploma but don't get there, it's because of this one requirement. What this does is allows them to match that up and be able to get that advanced diploma.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 323? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 323 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 4.
Ayes 36, noes 4. Senate Bill 323 passes.
Senate Bill.
Mr. President.
Who are we? Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Before we get too far down the line here, having voted on the prevailing side by which we failed to pass Senate Bill 67, I move that we reconsider that vote.
Question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 67 failed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Having previously explained the bill, I move that it pass.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from James City County? Senator Norman, rise.
I rise to speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator, it's the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the Senate Bill 67 was previously defeated on a vote of 18 to 21 with one individual who did not vote at that time. So I would encourage everyone that voted no previously to vote once again and appreciate the bipartisan support in defeating this bill.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 67? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 67 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Ayes 19, noes 21. Senate Bill 67 fails.
Senate Bill 352, a bill relating to guardianship and conservatorship, supported decision-making alternative.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that measure.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, this bill is a whole lot more simple than it appeared when we were in committee. It just simply requires that guardian ad litems in their report to the judge should address whether a guardian or conservator is needed based on evaluation and reviews conducted and whether a supported decision-making agreement is a viable option in lieu of guardianship or conservatorship. Mr. President, that is pretty much the essence of the bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 352? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 352 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 352 passes.
Senate Bill 401, a bill relating to immunity of persons at public hearing, attorney fees, cost.
The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that SB 401 pass. And speaking to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you. SB 401 seeks to put a stop to the growth of frivolous lawsuits that we have in Virginia. The Commonwealth is notorious for its weak anti-SLAPP laws. SLAPP measures are strategic lawsuits against public participation, and they are typically filed in order to silence individuals from speaking out and exercising their First Amendment free speech rights. They are often targeted at individuals who are in media, journalists, and reporters. They are also targeted against comedians and individuals who use parody and satire against public officials. So SB 401 seeks to put an end to these kinds of frivolous lawsuits, which are pricey. They can be detrimental to an individual, and they can serve to silence free speech. And I ask that we pass this measure.
For what purpose, Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to ask the junior senator from Richmond a question.
From Chesterfield.
Chesterfield.
The senator yield for a question?
Yes.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask the senator if she can tell me when the last one of these lawsuits that are prevalent in Virginia was filed?
Senators, the floor.
We have some that are currently ongoing. The most famous one that you might have read about is directed against Devin Nunes's cow. Devin Nunes's cow is a parody account on Twitter, and because Devin Nunes himself has taken great offense at this parody account, he has filed a lawsuit against it. He's filed it in Virginia rather than in California, where it should actually have been filed.
Mr. President.
Further question?
So I would ask the gentlelady if the lawsuit filed by that Republican Congress person is actually what motivated this bill.
Senators, the floor.
No, it is not.
Right. I thank the gentlelady.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Servo rise. No? For what purpose is the senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan, rise?
Speaking to the bill.
Senators, the floor.
Very briefly, Mr. President, this was actually also an issue that the junior senator from Chesterfield's predecessor, as well as former member of the House, Manoli Lupasi, were dealing with due to some SLAPP lawsuits that were filed in their jurisdictions. So I think the original source of the issue we've been trying to address actually was local government issues in nature.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, to speak the second time.
Senator has the floor.
I didn't like the bill then either.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 401? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 401 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. Senate Bill 401 passes.
Senate Bill 489, a bill relating to authority to defer and dismiss a criminal case.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, first of all, I move the bill pass, and speaking of that motion.
Senator, it's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this bill clarifies or brings conclusion to a long-standing or running debate in criminal procedure in Virginia law. Basically, for those of you who aren't lawyers, there's a dispute right now about whether or not judges, if they hear sufficient evidence to find someone guilty, whether they're required to convict somebody or whether or not they can, in their discretion, say continue a charge for a period of time and either drop the charge or find somebody guilty of a different charge. If they think that the case is not particularly serious or there's other meritorious circumstances for which an alternate disposition might be merited. The Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals have issued 2 or 3 or 4 different opinions. The most recent one, I believe, is called Stars, or I believe the senator from Franklin County may have had some experience with this just recently. But there's been a lot of different opinions about this, and this brings it to conclusion. So what the bill does is it says that in any case where an accused person either pleads guilty or if a judge finds them guilty with their consent, the judge can continue the matter for a period of time on terms and conditions, put the person on probation, tell them you have to go take classes, you have to do community service, you got to pay restitution, you have to, write a letter, whatever. And upon satisfaction of those terms and conditions, the charge could either be dismissed or reduced. And again, it requires the consent of the accused. It also provides that if the Commonwealth attorney and the defense agree to do this, that it can be done. There's actually some dispute right now in many courts about whether or not even with the agreement of the Commonwealth it can be done. But as we sort of work to make our criminal justice system a little more flexible to deal with the different scenarios that provide, I think this will provide a useful method to resolve cases instead of everything resulting in a conviction and long-term consequences for people. And that's basically what the bill does. I would hope the Senate would pass the bill.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 489? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 489 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. Senate Bill 489 passes.
Senate Bill 543, a bill relating to firearms shows mandatory background check.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 543 pass.
Senators, the floor.
By way of explanation, this bill, quote, closes the gun show loophole. Several years ago, you may remember we passed a bill that allowed voluntary background checks at gun shows for people selling their guns privately. The state police were there, and I think charged a couple of dollars to do a background check, an instant background check. And now we're saying that if you're at a gun show and you're doing a private sale of a gun, you would have to do a background check. The state police are there. It's going to cost a couple of dollars, I believe. And this simply closes the gun show loophole. And I don't know why anybody would not want to do a background check at a gun show when the state police are there. It protects the seller. Protects the seller in the event the gun is used by the purchaser for some illegal purpose. And so with that explanation, I move the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 543? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 543 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. Senate Bill 543 passes.
Senate Bill 545, a bill relating to appeals of right in General District Court, appeal of all claims.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Senators, the floor.
And by way of explanation, Mr. President, Senate Bill 545 is called the piggyback appeal from the General District Court to the Circuit Court. What it does is simply say, if you, for example, are the plaintiff, if the plaintiff in the case who loses can appeal to the Circuit Court and has 10 days to note the appeal. Well, if the defendant has filed a counterclaim, he better have filed an appeal also within the 10 days. Otherwise, he loses his right to litigate the counterclaim in the Circuit Court. So this just simply says if there's an appeal at all of any party, the whole case goes up, the claim, the counterclaim, and any other claim that happens to be involved. And with that explanation, I move the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 545? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 545 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. Senate Bill 545 passes.
Senate Bill 667, a bill relating to arrest and prosecution when experiencing or reporting overdoses. There is a floor amendment.
That's what. Okay. Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Mr. President, I ask that we reconsider the vote by which the bill was ordered to be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the bill was ordered and engrossed and advanced to its third reading be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The motion is agreed to. May I ask the senator from Northwestern Fairfax, do you wish to waive the reading?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall the reading be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading is waived. Mr. Senator, do you wish to have the substitute be agreed to?
Yes, Mr. President, I do, please.
Thank the senator. Do you want to very briefly explain?
Certainly. There's actually two amendments. One is a floor amendment. One is a substitute here. The substitute, which was agreed to in committee gives immunity to police officers who might make an arrest to the.
So now, I believe we've adopted one.
Voice.
No, you're fine. We've adopted
all
one.
That. I
but not-
apologize.
It's just the floor amendment. No
just
problem.
the floor amendment. I would like to thank the senator from Hanover and the senator from Eastern Fairfax for bringing up a legal issue. This would just make a technical amendment, and I move that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. For what person from Hanover, Senator McDougal, rise?
Mr. President, briefly to speak in favor of the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
I'd like to thank the gentlelady as well, and I know that she's not feeling her best today, but I became very focused on this section last year when a gentleman that I had prosecuted with some 20 years ago, his daughter ended up being killed as a result of somebody not calling in the overdose. And Mr. President, she was left in the closet when people came and knocked on the door, and she died. And Mr. President, this goes a step farther than what we were able to get through the legislature last year. I think with this amendment that fixes what potentially could have been a defense for somebody who was giving the drugs to individuals, this bill will save lives. And I thank the gentlelady for her courtesies as we went through and looked at the specific language and encouraged the body to support the amendment and the bill.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is adopted. Does the senator from Northwestern Fairfax wish to engross in advance to the third reading?
Yes, Mr. President, I do.
Question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading. The senator from Northwestern Fairfax wishes to suspend the rules and dispense with the third constitutional reading.
Mr. President, I do.
Thanks, Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third constitutional reading be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
40, no, 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The rules are suspended and the third constitutional reading is dispensed with. Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass.
Thank the senator for the reasons previously explained.
Yes.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 667 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no, 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. Senate Bill 667 passes.
Mr. President.
For what purpose, Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D-Steph, rise.
Having voted on the prevailing side in which we passed Senate Bill 545 on page 12, I'd like to reconsider that vote.
Question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 545 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no, 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass, and I've previously explained the bill. This is the piggyback appeals.
Thanks, Senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 545 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no, 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. Senate Bill 545 passes.
Senate Bill 712, a bill relating to the Virginia Human Rights Act, discrimination on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, reasonable accommodation for the known limitations of persons related to pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical condition.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
This is the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act that will combat pregnancy discrimination, promote public health, and ensure full and equitable participation and opportunity for pregnant workers. This bill is modeled after legislation that has passed in several states, including most recently Kentucky and South Carolina, where they found that it actually has helped reduce litigation, particularly with small businesses who don't have the resources to comb through all of the case law under federal pregnancy discrimination laws, and I move that we pass the bill.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 712? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 712 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 712 passes.
Senate Bill 729, a bill relating to school principals' incident reports.
Senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move that Senate Bill 729 pass. And speaking to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
This bill returns to school administrators' discretion in when to report misdemeanor student behavior that could rise to the level of a misdemeanor. It still mandates that any activity that constitutes a felony needs to be reported to law enforcement, but allows principals where they can handle lower level behavior through the disciplinary process, they can do so.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 729? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 729 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 16.
Ayes 24, no 16. Senate Bill 729 passes.
Senate Bill 730, a bill relating to custodial interrogation recording.
Senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 730 pass.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you. This bill is a recommendation of the Virginia Criminal Justice Conference to require, where practicable, law enforcement will record custodial interrogations. This bill was originally brought to address concerns around false confessions, and after several years of study, we've reached peace in the valley on a compromise bill.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 730? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 730 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 730 passes.
Senate Bill 788, a bill relating to grand larceny and certain property crimes threshold.
Senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 788 pass.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
This increases the grand larceny threshold from $500 to $1,000, bringing us in line with several other states.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 788? For what purpose does Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Will the gentlelady from Richmond rise for a question?
Will Senator yield?
Certainly.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked the senator, didn't we double the amount last year?
Senator's the floor.
I think it was a couple of years ago, but yes.
Further question?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay.
Senator Yield?
Might have been last year.
Senator Yield?
Yes.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thanks. So I think we went from $200 to $500, and now this bill would raise it to $1,000. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Senator's the floor. Further question?
Yes, yes, Mr. President. One last question.
All right. Senator Yield?
Yes.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
What's it going to go to next year?
Senator has the floor.
I am not planning to introduce a bill next year, so I don't know.
Speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we have indeed raised the larceny threshold. I believe it's from $200 to $500 last year. Now we're taking a huge jump to $1,000. Now, I just don't know why we have to do this. It just seems that we're just packing as much stuff on as we possibly can. But raising that threshold from $500 to $1,000 1 year after we already doubled it just seems like I don't know why we have to do this. It just seems at $500 we ought to let that work for a while since we just raised it. So I hope we'll not support the bill.
For what purpose is Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senior senator from Richmond yield for 2 questions?
Senator Yield for 2 questions?
Yes.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
I can actually see someone on the other side. This is nice. Mr. President, I was aware that we raised it 2 years ago because that was my bill. And does the senator, would she like to share with the body when the previous time it was raised before 2 years ago?
Senator, has the floor.
A very long time ago, I believe, before I was elected to this body.
It was before. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the senator. Yes, I would say it was before some people in this body were born.
Yes.
And that the reason that it was only raised to 500 is because that was what was the ability at the time down the hall, and it should have gone higher. My second question is, when she mentioned other states, is she aware what that very soft on crime state of Texas's felony threshold is?
Senator, has the floor.
Higher than $500.
It's over it's more than 1,000 too. I would point out it's well over 1,000. So I thank the lady in speaking briefly to it.
Senator, has the floor.
I think that this is something that should have gone higher. It was under the impression of several of us that it was going to go higher, but a bad deal was cut with folks at the other end of the hall, and that's why it's now coming up to 1,000. And so I thank the senator for bringing the bill this year.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
Mr. President, to support the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
Let's take a hypothetical. Right now it's at $500. And let's suppose that somebody who had a prior record maybe stole a car or a motorcycle, served a couple years in prison, got out, and a couple years later he's had a little too much to drink, and in a parking lot of a car that took up maybe 2 spaces, he kicks a couple dents in the door. You're looking at, because A, he had a prior record, and B, I can assure you those 2 dents in that door are way more than $500 worth of damage. He's probably looking somewhere, I don't know, 3 to 5 years in jail if he's charged with a Class 6 felony, which in theory this would be at this point. So for about $1,100 worth of damage, we're going to ask the taxpayers to shell out about $100,000 for room and board for him at one of our hotels. This is absurd. And we need to do something about this. As pointed out, in Texas, where they essentially execute you for spitting on the street, theirs is more than double ours, and this needs to go to $1,000. So I would hope you all would support this.
What purpose does the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak briefly to the bill.
There's the floor.
And under the old adage, everything has been said, but not everybody has said it. When I first came to the House in 2002, this was my bill to raise the felony threshold, and I actually brought down the gentleman from Fairfax County, Senator Joe Gartland, who had brought the bill in 1980 to move it from 100 to 200. So the answer to the trivia question was 1980, and I do think it's more than appropriate we raise it again.
Thank the senator. Does anyone other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 788? Seeing none, senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion the bill pass. And very briefly, I can't help but think of a story that the former Republican Secretary of the Commonwealth told me about an individual who took a Coach bag, threw it in a lake, and ultimately was charged with a felony because that Coach bag was over the grand larceny threshold. And I think we just need to recognize that the price of everything has gone up significantly since 1980, and I ask that we pass the bill.
Question is, shall Senate Bill 788 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. Senate Bill 788 passes.
Senate Bill 792, a bill related to conveyance of right-of-way usage to certain non-public service companies.
Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 792 pass. And speaking to that motion,
Senator, you have the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, Senate Bill 792 is a very simple bill that seeks to deal with the problem encountered by a Virginia 501c4 corporation that works to deploy broadband throughout rural Virginia, and a problem they recently encountered with VDOT. The corporation has been deploying broadband with our community partners, and just a 501c34 is a nonprofit social welfare organization. Has been deploying broadband for about 16 years. VDOT has not been requiring the payment of fees or also other technical requirements for the deployment of this broadband right away all those years, and they were recently told because they were not certificated by the State Corporation Commission, they would have to start complying with the other procedures that other for-profits have had to comply with, including the payment of fees, which can be prohibitive with some of these projects. And in addition, securing the permission of adjoining landowners or showing that they attempted to notify adjoining landowners. So what this bill does is just return things to the status quo and say that they do not, that because it's a 501c4, they do not have to comply with those other measures. It goes back to the status quo the way it was, and so that's the bill. Mr. President, I renew my motion that it pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 792? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 792 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 39, no 0, Rule 36-1. Senate Bill 792 passes. For what purpose does Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 811 pass and request permission to speak to the bill.
Yes, I'll have the clerk read the title first. But you're ready to go. There you go.
Senate Bill 811, a bill relating to sentencing in a criminal case jury trial. Your turn.
The Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Mr. President, did you see the look that the clerk gave me when I jumped the gun there?
No, I purposely did not look at her.
I know that look. Same look that Mother Superior gave me at St. Michael's.
He called me.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, move that Senate Bill 811 pass and request permission to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of this body, this bill provides that in cases of trial by jury in criminal cases, the judge will do the sentencing unless, and there's a caveat, the defendant specifically requests that he wants the jury to also do the sentencing. A lot of folks don't realize this, but Virginia is one of only 6 states where the jury still does the sentencing. The other 6 states are Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Texas. Allowing trial by the jury, but the judge to do the sentencing would be in conformity to 44 other states, Mr. President, and it would allow all those things that we want. We like truth in sentencing. We like judges to have the sentencing guidelines. We like victims to be able to address the court. It allows the judge who has a wealth of knowledge beyond that of the 12 jurors to make an informed sentence. So with that, Mr. President, I'd ask that SB 811 pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 811? For what purpose, Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, somebody has to stand up and say something about this bill, so I rise to speak.
Senator has the
to
floor.
The bill. Mr. President, members of the Senate, I would hope that members would vote no on this bill. We have a tradition of trusting our fellow citizens in the Commonwealth of Virginia, especially in conjunction with civil and criminal disputes and matters in our court system. This is a significant change of policy. This is not something that we should do without giving it some thought. This is taking away from jurors, from our friends and neighbors, the right to make decisions about what sentence to apply in criminal cases across Virginia. I think that this is the wrong course. It is being done without really a great deal or any serious deliberation. I think that this is something we will regret doing. Certainly, we will regret doing it with this speed and dispatch. So I would urge members to vote no.
For what purpose is the Senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Surville rise.
Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we support this legislation. This is a very important reform to our criminal justice system. I don't think the junior senator from Richmond mentioned it, but there are only 6 states left in the United States of America that still allow juries to recommend a sentence. It's us, Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas. That's it. And the reason most states have abandoned it, and by the way, the federal government, when you're charged with a crime in the federal system, you're not sentenced by a jury or recommended by sentenced by a jury or sentenced by a judge, is because juries often don't get as much information and have as much perspective on these issues as courts do. And the bill does, by the way, retain the right to get a jury sentence if the accused wants to. So it doesn't take away the accused right. It just says the Commonwealth can't mandate it. And judges, from our perspective, are just in a better position to make these decisions. Judges have to see these crimes in court every day. They have a sense of perspective about really bad crimes and really bad offenders, and people can be rehabilitated. We entrust our judges to make these decisions on our behalf, and they're just really in a better position. That's why this is how it works in the rest of the country. And I would urge the body to support the bill.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from James City County? Senator Norman rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to the bill, and I've listened fairly attentively to the discussions both in favor of against this bill. And one of the things that has not been brought up, which is very real under Virginia's system, is what we call judicial performance evaluations. And these are evaluations that are submitted on judges when they are being considered for reappointment. There have been efforts to enlarge the information that is being put on judicial performance evaluations. And I will say that both the House Courts Committee and the Senate now Judiciary Committee, they look at these evaluations, particularly as to the comments that are made on there. And I tell you, Mr. President, what is going to happen is there's going to be greater scrutiny on these judicial performance evaluations because of the pressure of the judges to stay within the sentencing guidelines and to be reticent to deviate either down or up because they know it's going to be considered on their reappointments. Therefore, I think we ought to move more deliberately and not enact it this year.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 811? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 811 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 17.
Ayes 23, noes 17. Senate Bill 811 passes.
Senate Bill 915, a bill relating to the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation, training requirement for cosmetologists.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the measure.
Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What this bill seeks to do is reduce the number of licensure hours required of a barber or cosmetologist from 1,500 hours down to 1,200 hours. Sometimes I think we overregulate things a little bit. It requires 750 hours to become a tattoo artist. It's 1,200 hours to become a paramedic. What we're seeking here is to reduce from 1,500 to 1,200 the number of hours required in this profession. And here's the problem, and there's two sides to the story, as there always are. What we're finding is that certainly the schools, the cosmetology schools, want to keep things the way they are. That's their business model. This is the way they've been doing business for years, and that's understandable. What we're finding is that other states have reduced it to 1,200 hours and are doing just fine with no increase above what Virginia has at 1,500 hours. They're not having any more complaints at 1,200. But what 1,500 becomes, because of the cost of these programs, which is $20,000 to $25,000, and the amount of time that it takes, is that what you are finding is this is a barrier for people to find careers, not just jobs, but careers. And what we're finding is that for the lower end of the stores, the hair cutteries, the great clips, the sports clips, they're really having trouble filling their shops with qualified people. Everybody goes to school and they dream of a high-end shop, of being the next Vidal Sassoon or whatever, but most people are going to end up there. There are over 6,000 people employed in that way. There's 300 of those stores here in the Commonwealth. So what we're attempting to do is to reduce the hours from 1,500 to 1,200 to remove that barrier for people. And it also requires that every 2 years you get 4 hours of ongoing professional training, which would indeed hopefully be done by the cosmetology schools. So let's deregulate a little bit. Let's make it easier for people to get ahead and get a career going for themselves. And I ask again that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 915? For what purpose, Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben rise?
To ask if the senator would yield for a question.
Will Senator yield?
I yield.
Senator yield, you have the floor.
I would ask the senator, isn't there already a state board that can make these decisions on how many hours for training are required?
I would answer the senator that I'm not sure they have that authority. Right now it's in statute, and that's what we're attempting to change.
I thank the gentleman.
Thanks, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 915? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 915 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 25, noes 15.
Ayes 25, noes 15. Senate Bill 915 passes.
Senate Bill 933, a bill to require the Department of Education and Board of Education to take certain actions relating to students with limited or interrupted formal education.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a Section 1 bill, and it directs the Department of Education to develop a standard definition for our students who arrive here with limited or an interrupted formal education. All of our school systems have some students that fit that category, and these are students who are not very proficient in their native language, and they're not proficient in English, and they're usually older than the average student for the grade they're entering. So we need a statewide definition, and the bill also asks the Department of Education to collect data on what support services these students really need to succeed and what school systems are currently providing. And finally, the bill asks the Department of Education to come up with ways for appropriately measuring the academic success of these students in our overall accreditation assessment. So this is a study. I've worked with school systems and the Department of Education. This is a problem that many educators have identified, and we would like to move forward. And I would ask that the body pass this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben rise? No. Okay. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 933? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 933 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 13.
Ayes 27, noes 13. Senate Bill 933 passes.
Senate Bill 938, a bill relating to fees collected by circuit court clerks for recording and indexing use of the fees in preserving permanent records of the circuit courts.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I submitted this bill at the request of the Association of Circuit Court Clerks, or Clerks of the Circuit Court. What this bill does is it allows for a $2 increase in the various categories fee categories that are charged for preserving and indexing certain records that have to be filed with the clerks of the court. These dollars would go to the Library of Virginia, because the Library of Virginia is actually charged with doing the archiving, and there is an estimate that approximately $2.5 million would be coming into the state coffers for this purpose. For those reasons, I ask that the body pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 938? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 938 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. Senate Bill 938 passes.
Senate Bill 940, a bill relating to circuit court clerk's fee, lodging of wills.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill has to do with the lodging of wills, and it would provide for a $3 increase in that fee. Again, this was requested by the clerks of the circuit courts. Funds would go to the state, but I guess the important point here is the fee schedule has not been changed since 1956, and it's time to ensure that we have documents in the best shape we could possibly have. These are important documents. Folks need to access them. The dollars would be going to the state. For those reasons, I ask that the body pass this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall rise?
Mr. President, speak briefly to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, the difference between this bill and the one we previously voted on, this is for a very little used practice. A court can hold your will. So if you want to give them your will and they hold it until it's sometime when it goes to probate or you pass, it is voluntary. It's not required. And Mr. President, the gentlelady was correct in that, unfortunately, the money still does not go to the court. It goes into the general fund, which is something I have a concern about. But this is a service that the courts don't necessarily have to do. And at $2, they don't have the financial capacity to do this as well as the many other tasks they had. So I'd ask that the body support the bill.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 940 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 940 passes.
Senate Bill 983, a bill relating to Certificate of Public Need, definition of medical care facility.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, what I'd like to say about this bill is that while Virginia's COPM framework requires approval for many outpatient hospitals, departments like surgery centers and imaging centers, there's an obvious regulatory oversight for the review of and approval of these FSEDs. Currently, VDH does not require licensure of the FSEDs, which is, of course, these freestanding emergency departments. And so, Mr. President, this is a good policy, and so I recommend that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 983? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 983 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 3.
Ayes 36, noes 3.
Rule
Senate Bill
36-1.
Sorry, ayes 36, noes 3, Rule 36-1. Senate Bill 983 passes.
Senate Bill 1015, a bill relating to possession of marijuana, cannabidiol oil, or THCA oil.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just as a quick update, the 5 medical cannabis oil processors that we created, 5 years ago, one of them has been now permitted. The others are getting close. We're going to have crops in the ground here soon, and people are going to be able to start receiving these life-improving oils for whatever your physician feels is a reason for you to be recommended for them. What this bill does is remove from the possibility of prosecution anyone with a legitimate certificate from a physician to be diagnosed with these oils, and their guardians or the guardian, if it's a minor, or the guardian of an incapacitated adult. All of them can handle the oils without risk of prosecution, and also the employees of these facilities. And this is critical because it's very difficult to hire somebody if we're still on the affirmative defense model. They need to be assured that they're not going to be arrested for delivering these products or processing these products or in any way handling them. So that's what the bill does, and I would reiterate my motion that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1015? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1015 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 1015 passes.
Senate Bill 1020, a bill relating to public schools, alternative accountability process, assault and battery without bodily injury.
Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that Senate Bill 1020 pass. And speaking to that,
Senator, you have the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, Senate Bill 1020 is part of school discipline reform, but it basically just gives permissively our school divisions the alternative to provide when there is behavior that does not rise to a serious level of criminal conduct and behavior, that they can create an alternative program where the student, the student's parents, and the school division can agree on providing an alternative punishment rather than referral to the criminal process or all-out suspension. I worked with the stakeholders. They had no objection in the committees, and I think this just gives our schools yet another way of trying to make sure that when we're disciplining students, of course the discipline is serious and it makes a difference, but in that process, that if we have an alternative, it doesn't have those children fall behind and harm their ability to graduate and become productive members of our citizenry. So I now renew my motion that Senate Bill 1020 pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Mr. President, speak in support of Senate Bill 1020.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of this body, when most of us were in elementary or middle or high school, we didn't have SROs. We did not have metal detectors, and the first default when there was student misconduct was not to call police. I remember back in the day when I taught and coached, I asked a veteran teacher, what's the biggest, tip you can give me on going forward in teaching, and especially with regard to student discipline? And I'll never forget what she told me. She was telling me that the difference between the boys and girls getting in a little bit of tiff. And she said this, Joe, you take 2 boys in the morning that get into a fight on the school lot, They're best friends again by the afternoon. You take two girls that get into a little bit of an argument over the style of one's hair, they're still angry at each other 4 years later when they're in high school. Now, what we do now when those two boys get into a fight, the first default is to call the police. The police are brought in, and next thing you have is a proceeding in juvenile and domestic relations court. This bill creates alternatives for that. And I might add the people that are more likely to be detained by the police and have a proceeding in a juvenile and domestic relations court far and away are people of color. For those reasons, I'd ask that the body support SB 1020.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1020? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1020 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 1020 passes.
Senate Bill 1026, a bill relating to pharmacists initiating treatment, dispensing, and administering of controlled substances.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 1026 pass and speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
This bill allows pharmacists to do more things than they have done in the past that is within their scope. Things that would be more accessible to individuals who may not be able to get into a doctor's office, take the time off from work, make an appointment. And specifically, those things would include vaccinations for adults. This is all for adults. Vaccinations, dietary fluoride, naloxone, which can already be dispensed by pharmacists, epinephrine, birth control pills. You could get your TB test there, birth control injections as well, and any medications that an insurance would actually cover and pay for that are over-the-counter medications. I can write a prescription for a patient to get ibuprofen, and they can get it less expensively often in their health plan than they can if they buy over-the-counter. So the key to this legislation is that it has a delayed enactment clause on it. And that means it will not be enacted until 2021 when we look at it again, because that's going to give us time to build out the regulations between the Board of Pharmacy and the Board of Medicine so that we can make sure that all the stakeholders, some of whom have anxiety about this, will be confident that this is a means to actually get more patients into primary care. Patients that don't have a patient-centered medical home or a physician will be given access to free clinics and or the health department or given a primary care provider. This is a way to both make some things that are safe to do with pharmacists more easily accessible, but also to ensure patients get more access to preventative care. So with that in mind, Mr. President, I move that we pass the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Kiggins, rise?
Rise to speak in support of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
I think we can all agree that healthcare costs are too expensive, and we've all argued for the availability and accessibility of cheaper forms of healthcare. Our responsibility as allied health providers, including physicians, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, therapists, is to care for our patients and do what's best for them. We have a provider shortage in this country, and we need to start thinking outside the box of ways to provide this care for our patients. I frequently use the pharmacy, my local pharmacy, for vaccinations, and I think this is just a fabulous idea to let our patients get vaccines, fluoride, especially for contraception and prevention of pregnancy. The pro-choice, pro-life debate, I mean, I think we can all agree that the goal is prevention of pregnancies. If we can reduce the number of abortions, that would be absolutely fabulous, and I think this bill is a vehicle to do that. Senator Donovan also mentioned just this bill, using it as a vehicle to get people into primary preventative care. If they are seen by a pharmacist, that note needs to go to their health care provider, and they need to be seen for follow-up with a primary care provider. So I think this bill just allows patients to do that and encourages them to do that. So I think this bill is absolutely in the best interest of our patients, and I would respectfully request that you support this bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1026?
Mr. President.
What purpose, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Would the patron yield for a question, please?
Will Senator yield?
I yield.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Thank you. I apologize, and I'm not a doctor, but my eyes went to paragraph 8 on line 65, and I just want to make sure I understand this. You will now be allowing pharmacists to diagnose for certain viruses that cause infections and allow pharmacists to prescribe antibiotics and other things for treatment of that without a doctor actually making that diagnosis?
Senator, is the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill would not have pharmacists diagnosing anything, nor prescribing. They're dispensing medications. But for somebody who presented with flu or symptoms of flu or strep throat, if indeed they had a positive test, the pharmacist could then dispense the appropriate medication to initiate treatment as quickly as possible, which is in the best interest of containing that illness, and give them very clear guidelines that would be developed by the regulations that we're talking about under what circumstances they needed to follow up with the physician and in what timetable. So I think that's an area of miscommunication that has caused concern. Pharmacists are not diagnosing. Only if the patient has a positive test can they dispense. If they don't, they have to refer that patient to a physician or a practitioner. And so it is something that is well within pharmacist scope and is done in other countries. But I think that's part of the bill that is going to be looked at very closely when the regs are developed before the reenactment clause.
Further question? Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1026? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1026 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. Senate Bill 1026 passes.
Senate Bill 1043, a bill relating to civil actions filed on behalf of multiple persons.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill has to do with basically with class actions. There are 48 states in the United States of America that allow class actions at the state level. Virginia is not one of them. We stand strong with Mississippi. You might ask whether that's an issue. Well, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has ranked different states' legal systems to figure out. They have an institute called like the Institute for Legal Reform or something under the U.S. Chamber, and they rank legal systems to say, you know, how friendly they are to business, I guess. Anyway, Virginia is ranked number 12, and Mississippi, who's standing strong with us on class actions, is at number 47. And so I would just say, first of all, if any of you all are worried about whether or not adding class actions to the procedural options in Virginia, how that might affect our pro-business ranking, I would say that if it did, Mississippi wouldn't be at number 47 and we wouldn't be at number 12. But basically, this already happens in Virginia in a lot of cases that are in federal court. But right now, there's a couple types of cases that you can't file in federal court that have to go to state court, and this would have been very useful. I'll give you two examples. One of which is the Chinese drywall cases. And the Chinese drywall cases, the Virginians who were affected, could not be resolved through the federal class action because they were in a lot of the Chinese drywall came through a Virginia distributor in Norfolk. And because there's no diversity of citizenship, it couldn't go to federal court. And so all those cases had to be resolved individually. Secondly, there's the case that just happened recently, the Volkswagen litigation over the Volkswagen emissions. There were over 400 cases filed in Fairfax County Circuit Court over Volkswagen cases because they couldn't join the federal class action because, again, the lack of diversity. And if anybody thinks it's more efficient for a legal system to resolve 400 cases, one case at a time, versus doing them all at once as a group, I would just say you ought to have your head examined because that isn't the best way to do it. I would also just note that in my experience, being involved in a few of these, a lot of businesses actually like to resolve cases this way because they can wipe out an entire bunch of claims by settling a class. So you can wipe out like thousands of cases and not have to worry about getting sued over a bunch of things. So there are advantages to it. So we're not, from my perspective, we're not treading any new ground here. We're just sort of bringing Virginia up to speed procedurally with what many other states, the vast majority of other states do. And we're going to leave Mississippi in the dust. So having said that, I hope we can pass the bill.
For what purpose is Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak in opposition to this.
Senator's
Speaking
the
the
floor.
bill, Mr. President, members of the Senate, Senator from Eastern Fairfax may be right in that standing alone, this bill might not have a dramatic impact upon our business ranking by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. However, taken together with collective bargaining, prevailing wage, the repeal of the prohibition on project labor agreements, and the dramatic increase in minimum wage, among other things, it will have a dramatic impact upon our business ranking by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So I'd urge a no vote.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1043? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1043 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. Senate Bill 1043 passes.
Senate Bill 1049, a bill relating to involuntary commitment, notice, and participation family members.
Senator from Bath, Senator D.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass. As this bill was introduced, it was designed to clarify the role of family members who want to be involved and who's the person subject to an emergency custody order wants them to be involved. It was designed to clarify their role in the whole process. As it's been amended in the committee, the bill now requires the family member to be identified by and requested by the person who's subject to the emergency custody order, and it allows them to be present and to obtain certain information, to be present at all times when the evaluation is being undertaken and in any hearing. Again, I'd ask that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1049? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1049 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 1049 passes.
Senate Bill 1081, a bill to provide that certain applications for a certificate of public need shall be deemed to demonstrate a public need for the proposed service and to be consistent with the state medical facilities plan.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate pass Senate Bill 1081. Speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1081 is a very important bill to Senator Edwards, myself, folks in the Roanoke Valley and on the I-81 corridor. What it seeks to do is allow a specialty level neonatal intensive care unit in Salem, which is the city that I represent that shares a border that's adjacent to the Senator from Roanoke City's district. And there's a hospital there that has hundreds of children born every year, but there's no NICU. Senator from Roanoke City and my predecessor worked on this for years. He and I have worked on this. This summer, we got to spend some time in one of those non-discrete office buildings in the Senator from Henrico's district, making our case to the State Health Commissioner and their organization for this. And when they listened to us that day and they listened to the neonatologist, which is the specialty doctor that works with these babies at both Carilion, Roanoke Memorial, and all the other experts that were there, they agreed that we should be able to have this and recommended it. Unfortunately, inertia being what it is, the commissioner denied us, and in the denial made things about concerns about charity care, even though Lewis Gale is providing it. So I hope it'll be the pleasure of the Senate to pass this bill so that we can have the specialty level NICU in Salem and in the Roanoke Valley that the mother and children of our area need.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does the Senator for Roanoke City, Senator Edwards, rise?
Mr. President, speaking in favor of the bill,
There's the floor.
I associate my remarks with the senator from Roanoke County. We agree on a lot of things, maybe disagree on a few things, but on this one we're together. And I think the Roanoke Valley delegation, I believe, is together on this as well. We had the certain hospital, Lewis Gale, HCA Hospital, had been trying to get a NIC unit, about 10 or 15 beds, I believe, for probably 8 years or so, and has been denied repeatedly, despite the fact that the opposing hospital, Crillon, is not opposing it now, and said so at the hearing before the hearing officer. And the hearing officer recommended approval, but for some reason the commissioner denied approval. So I'd hope the body would see that this should be passed. I like to look upon things from the perspective of the patient. If you're a mother and you just delivered and your baby has to be taken across town to another hospital and you're separated, this is not right. This is morally wrong. And I would hope the body would vote for this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
Wanted to make 2 points. One is I think when we in the General Assembly establish laws and set up a process for decisions to be made and in effect designate an official, a government official who has expertise in making these decisions to be able to make those decisions, I think it is certainly highly questionable for us to be able to step in and in effect overrule the people who are the experts and who have looked at a lot of information on things based upon very limited information that certainly most of us have in this situation. Secondly, I would also point out that there are clear linkages between the volumes of births at hospitals and the mortality rates. And generally what you have is infant mortality rates are substantially higher in small volume facilities than in larger volume facilities. So there are issues like that that need to be taken into consideration in making a decision by this in this situation. And we have an official, the Commissioner of Health, who is empowered and responsible for making those decisions. So I would hope it would be the will of the body to not approve this, to deny this proposal.
For what purpose does Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Speak in favor of the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I had not planned to speak on this bill. But you know what? I have been noting as we determine the number of hours it takes to be a cosmetologist in this state, I've seen in previous years if we've determined the number of fish, menhaden, that should be caught in the Chesapeake Bay. We get involved in things all the time that we don't necessarily know what the heck we're doing about. Every year, this issue comes back from legislators in the Roanoke Valley saying, we want this NICU unit. Every year they make their case. The elected officials from that area make their case. Every year we hear about a system that turns them down. We are the system. There's no reason for them to keep coming back. We have the ability to right wrongs in this body, on this floor. We do it all the time. We can do it now.
For what purpose does Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Briefly speak to the bill.
Senator, has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I truly ask you to pass this bill. I was driving down 81 last year, and I stopped at a rest stop, and there right in front of the rest stop was a lady holding one of the smallest babies I'd ever seen. And I said, oh, what a beautiful child. And we got to talking a little bit, and she said the only reason this child is here and alive is because of the neonatal intensive care unit that baby was in. These are our very, very most vulnerable Virginians. They need this intensive care, especially at that time in their life. I know we don't like to get involved too much in the COPM process, but the gentleman from Fairfax City is exactly right. This is something we do all the time, and this is something we need to do today. So please vote yes on this bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1081? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1081 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 5.
Ayes 34, noes 5. Senate Bill 1081 passes.
Senate Bill 1088, a bill relating to non-governmental emergency medical services agencies, disclosure, dissolution, return of property purchased with public funds.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the bill pass and speaking to it.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the body, very quickly, what this bill does is, in the event a volunteer rescue squad is dissolved in a locality, it says that they have to offer their equipment back to the locality in which they had the service. And the reason I bring this bill, there's litigation all over the state right now as a result of these volunteer rescue squads just simply going under, and everybody's seen it in each of their counties where we don't have folks to volunteer anymore, and so they're having to go to paid rescue service. The litigation often ends up over whether or not they can use that, the ambulances, the building, the life-saving packs. Sometimes they have money in the bank for other charitable purposes, but all this money was either given to them by the county in which they are, the city they're in, or it was raised through net drives. But the common denominator is the public gave this money to these rescue squads to provide life-saving services, and so the money would go back to the locality to provide life-saving services. I hope you'll support the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise in opposition to the bill.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Appreciate the opportunity. And I've spoken with the patron on some of the consideration, but I'll turn your attention to Section E, which is really the heart of the bill. And the language of the bill says any property. So conceptually, it is not just what the patron is offering, but what this bill does is creates a context of a property taking action. And so the key provision of any, for instance, that same 501c3 organization could have a bingo hall that's associated, that is not associated with the life-saving purpose, but still generates money for the community. And so this is starting to mix and blend different issues. I don't have an overall problem with the underlying concept, what the patron is trying to do, but the outcome of this bill has a pretty big impact to the organizations that you represent. A pretty big impact. And there's a different way to deal with this that I think this sets a pretty bad precedent to the volunteers in your communities that work hard day in and day out. And again, right now it says any property associated with that organization. You have a separate 501c3 under the IRS code that is providing and provision of service in your communities right now. They're still operating under these conditions. This sets up a whole new precedent of taking one entity, a separate entity from your county or city, outside of just an EMS unit or an ambulance in this condition. So I understand what the patron is going for, but this goes way too far. And I'd urge the body caution on this. It creates a different sort of context and precedence across the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 1088?
If no one else wishes to speak.
Seeing none, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Mr. President, I want to make sure it's clear to the body it's property that was purchased with public funds. It's not their property. It's property that was purchased with public funds. And I would remind the senator from Prince William that if any of these folks were to take any of that property home, the Commonwealth's attorneys could charge them with embezzlement or misappropriations. We don't want to see that happen. This is meant to be a clean solution for these rescue squads that frankly can't find volunteers anymore. I hope you'll support the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 1088 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 7.
Ayes 33, noes 7. Senate Bill 1088 passes.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. With great trepidation and fear of getting in the middle of Mr. Potter and Mr. Bailey's discussion, I would ask respectfully that we reconsider the vote by which Senate Bill 253 passed.
And which page is that, Senator?
That is page 7.
All right.
Some colleagues would like to reconsider their vote.
Got it. Question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 253 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin.
Mr. President, having previously explained the bill, I would move that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 253 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 12.
Ayes 27, noes 12. Senate Bill 253 passes.
Mr. President.
Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side where we passed Senate Bill 1088 on page 19, I would ask that we reconsider that vote.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1088 pass be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having previously explained the bill, I'd move it pass.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1088 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 7.
Ayes 33, noes 7. Senate Bill 1088 passes.
Returning to page 5 of the calendar. Senate Bill 34. A bill relating to the Department of Motor Vehicles, driver documents, and re-examination fees.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I again move the floor substitute, and having previously explained it, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do any senators wish to be heard regarding the floor substitute? For what purpose, Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to ask if the gentleman would yield for a question.
Will the senator yield?
Happily.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I always enjoy making him happy. It's been a few hours since the explanation. Do I understand that this is designed for undocumented immigrants to the United States?
Senator, the floor.
Yes, I would say primarily yes.
Okay. Further question?
Mr. President, I ask this question seriously and not facetiously or disingenuously. Are the tests and the applications on this, are they all printed in English or are they printed in multiple languages?
Senator, the floor.
I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Mr. President, I want you to mark this day down.
Will indeed.
Yeah.
Journal will so reflect.
Yes,
sir. Further question?
Mr. President, if I could direct the gentleman's attention back on page 44, which is already part of the bill on line 1195.
Yep. Got it.
Mr. President, my question really is more global. Are the existing provisions that are recited in this bill, especially under Section 24.2418, which would cover lines 1187 specifically down through 1196, are they applicable in this situation where the undocumented immigrants to the United States would be involved in this provision?
Senator, has the floor.
Well, what I would say to the senators, I'd have to go back and exactly square this with the rest, but I know that most of these other amendments were made as conforming. I think the special identification card is something that the DMV already issues. And it looks like they're just broadening it up and including all documents under Chapter 3. But I would note, if the gentleman's concern is registration, under our Constitution and the state code, you can't register to vote without a Social Security number. You can't obtain a Social Security number unless you're legally present in the United States.
Further question?
My question is that specific provision that I'm referring to, I just want to be certain that if, in fact, these undocumented immigrants who are seeking a license card, which I can appreciate why they would want, that information is not going to be used for voter registration purposes when, in fact, they are not even entitled to vote.
Senator, has the floor.
I tell the gentleman that it would not be used for that, can't be used for that, legally couldn't be used for that. So I think that answers your question.
Further question?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess that's the second mark you should make today on that he does not know. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake Rise?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to ask the patron if he will yield for several questions.
Will Senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Senator. In your answers to Senator from James City, you mentioned that no one can register to vote without a Social Security number. But is the patron aware that there is no requirement that a registrar or the DMV actually check the Social Security number of the person? And is the senator aware that I passed that bill twice through this body, and it was vetoed by two separate governors requiring that the Social Security number be checked?
Senator, has the floor.
I had forgotten. I would say to the gentleman, I'd forgotten about his bill, and I was unaware whether they check or not. I know that under our Constitution, a Social Security number is required. I would also just note that for somebody to provide false information on this application and also to try to use that same information to vote would probably constitute 2 felonies.
Further question?
Thank you. Another question, Mr. President.
Yes.
I'll yield.
And this is a more serious question, and I don't know, and I'm trying to, and looking through it. What proof does the individual show to get this driver privilege card?
Senator, has the floor.
I would say to the senator, the same proof any other person would have to show to get a card, to get a license or a walking permit or whatever the DMV, any other DMV credential, the exact same stuff.
A birth certificate? Isn't it, Mr. President? Is that a birth certificate?
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I don't have the full list in front of me, but I believe a birth certificate is one of the types of documents that can be used to establish your identity with the DMV. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. With regard to real ID, you have to, provide 2, and I can't remember whether with whether with a non-real ID you only have to provide 1, or whether you also have to provide 2. But the rules for this proving identity aren't any different than they are for a driver's license.
That's my, Mr. President. Yes, thank you, Patron Gill. That is my question, and so the person getting the driver privilege card would need the same ID that any resident of Virginia would use to get a driver's license, not real ID.
Senator, has the floor.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, will the gentleman from Fairfax yield for a question?
Will Senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I'm going to first start by saying you may want to reconsider your answer previously on the Social Security number, because in my jurisdiction, we have a lot of folks coming from all over the world on worker visas and temporary worker visas, and every single one of those, before they go to work, they have to, I'm going to repeat that, they have to have a Social Security card and a Social Security number. Secondly, if you do a quick Google search, you'll see that a Social Security card and Social Security number are issued to many temporary workers and non-immigrants whose visa status who authorize them to work in the United States.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, what I would say to the gentleman is I believe all those people would qualify right now for a regular license, and so they wouldn't need to get this privilege card. You know, if you're a lawful, legal U.S. resident, if you're a green card holder, if you have a legal visa, yeah, you can get a social, but you can still get a license. This bill is directed at people who are undocumented, not people who are documented.
Further question?
Mr. President, speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
If I'm not mistaken, when the senator from Jamestown asked a question about automatic voter registration, he said, well, it wouldn't happen that way because for that you have to have a Social Security card, Social Security number. Mr. President, I'm telling you right now that there are multiple, and I'm just giving two examples, there are multiple reasons and multiple ways to get a Social Security number, and it can be done for multiple temporary workers, not just those I discussed earlier.
For what purpose, Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko, rise?
Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. I'd just like to add a little bit of detail for some of the questions that were answered. For documentation purposes, a foreign passport is acceptable, a foreign driver's license is acceptable, a consular ID card is acceptable, expired immigration documents are acceptable. There are a variety. In fact, even you can be authorized to get a real ID here in Virginia without being a citizen, without having access to voting. You could be a felon. You could be someone here's under legal presence. What we are doing here is providing a credential for people, just like we were able to do in 2004. The reason that policy changed was because of 9/11. With Real ID now, we are separating those who have verified credentials that say we know exactly who you are because you've shown us your passport, the regular ID, the regular driver's license, and this privilege card do not allow you to get on a plane. They do not allow you to get benefits. They do not allow you to vote. And I support my colleague from Eastern Fairfax County, hoping that we can get this passed through. This is going to help people get their children to work. It's going to help, get people to school. People need to drive in Virginia, and this is the right thing for us to do. There are upwards of 200 to 300,000 people living in Virginia who currently do not have the access to a car. They're not paying for a license. They're not having insurance. They're not registering their cars. This is a way to bring everyone into the fold so that we know that people are trained, know that people know what the rules are, know that they have insurance. We will be safer on the road, and it will make it better for everyone. And I move that we pass this. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Mr. President, would the gentleman yield for one more question?
Senator, yield.
I'll yield, and I have a whole lot more to say once the sub's adopted.
Well, my
you have the floor.
My question's actually to the substitute, Mr. President. I want to make sure I understand what we're voting on. I would ask the gentleman, if you go to line 1951, and the paragraph before that, some of the information regarding their legal presence or the ability to get this card is not capable of being disclosed to certain agencies or entity. But then when you come to line 1951, as I understand it, you now will have folks their information to know who they are, where they reside, give them a card as such, an ID as such, and if a Commonwealth's attorney or a law enforcement officer is investigating a crime, they actually can get that information now.
Senator's the floor.
That's correct. I explained that earlier, that if they make an individualized request for the person, then they can get the confirmation and get that information. What that language prohibits is like a bulk upload of the entire list.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to make sure I was reading that correctly.
Thanks, Senator. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding the floor substitute? Seeing none, Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to point out a couple other things in the questions that my seatmate here pointed out to me that might help edify, or maybe not, some folks. But on line 1,118 of the bill, existing code requires the DMV to provide a list to the Department of Elections every year, a complete list of all persons who've indicated a non-citizen status to DMV. So that is provided to the Department of Elections so to make sure that people aren't registered inappropriately. And I also note on page 45 of the bill, line 1223, that it specifically states that when you're checking voters at the polls, you're to ask for a photo identification other than a driver privilege card issued under this. And again, remember under the bill we passed earlier this session, everybody has asked for a photo ID. It's just that they don't have it. There's a process to deal with that. So nothing we've done this session changes that you're going to be asked for ID. So having said that, again, I renew my motion to move the substitute. We have a floor amendment to get to, and I have a little bit more to say after that.
Question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to waive reading of the floor amendment.
Question is, are we taking up the floor amendment first? Okay. Question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the floor amendment. Speaking to that motion.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lines 1871 through 76 take out some language that some folks who read the sub outside the building here pointed out to me needs to come out. Basically allows DMV to share data on car defect, or what do they call it, car recall problems and things like that. It's language that wasn't supposed to be in it after we added the privacy language that the senator from King George was just talking to me about. So it needs to come out of the bill. It's a technical change.
Thanks, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is adopted. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor. Actually, let's engross in advance first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I move the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we dispense with the third constitutional reading of the bill.
And suspend the rules?
Sure.
Let's do
that too.
Question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third constitutional reading be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The rules are suspended, and the third constitutional reading is dispensed with. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to that motion.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Finally. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think the bill, you all know what's in front of you now. I just want to say a couple reasons why we need to do this. Number one, the Commonwealth Institute did an analysis of this legislation a little while ago, and they found that I believe there's between 124,000 and 160,000 people who will be benefited by this legislation. They estimate the additional revenue of the Department of Motor Vehicles is between about $11 million and close to $18 million a year, and that's solely from the vehicle titling fees, the driver's license fees, and stuff like that. That does not include the additional auto insurance premiums, taxes people will pay once they license or title their cars in Virginia, which right now a lot of people title their cars out of state because of this. It's also not going to, it doesn't pick up any of the additional income taxes that are going to be filed, because in order to get this privilege card, you have to file a tax return, and so that's not included in this at all. Second thing, in all the other states that have adopted this, they've seen a decline in collisions as people learn the rules of the road. They take the driving test, and they learn what the highway signs and the markings mean. In addition, in other states that have adopted this, hit and runs go way down, because once somebody has, once they have a credential, they're much more likely to stop and identify themselves, which also helps keep people's insurance down. Number three, more people are going to pay into the insurance pool, which lowers insurance premiums for everybody. The next thing I would point out is that the experience in other states has been that when people have privileged cards, when they have legal government identification, they're much more likely to interact with law enforcement. When a criminal situation happens, they're more likely to identify themselves as a witness. They're more likely to call if there's a domestic assault. They're just more likely to engage with law enforcement because they don't have to worry about being queried about all this stuff. The last thing I will say, this has been done now in, I believe, 17 other states, either full license or a privilege card. States like Maryland, D.C., Delaware, Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Vermont, New York. It's been done in a lot of other states because this is a critical quality of life issue. People need to be able to drive to get to a job, to get to the doctor, take their kid to soccer. It's an absolute necessity. And this is one of the few bills you're going to vote this session, which is going to change over 100,000 people's lives instantly the moment that it becomes law. Again, Mr. President, I think this is critical legislation for 130 to 200,000 plus Virginians. I hope we can pass it today.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 34? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 34 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 18.
Ayes 22, noes 18. Senate Bill 34 passes. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw. Senator, let me go to Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boyce, go first.
Mr. President.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boyce, go.
Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 48A, when any question is decided in the negative simply for want of a majority of the whole Senate, any senator who was absent from the city of Richmond or detained from his seat by a sickness or her seat by a sickness at the time of the vote sought to be reconsidered may move its recommendation. Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 48A, and having been absent from my seat yesterday by sickness, I move to reconsider the vote by which SB 621 was defeated on Monday, February the 10th, 2020.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 621 failed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Bass, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass, and I also move that we all read the rules and understand them. I certainly had never known that was part of the rules. And I've read the rules. I move the bill pass. This is the bill we had yesterday that went down on a vote of 19 to 20. This is a bill that presumes when a conservation easement is drafted, it adds the rule of interpretation. It presumes the against the grantor, so to protect the easement. This bill is necessary because of a Supreme Court case a few years ago that ruled in favor of development, and that threatens to undermine the entire tax credit program. As I said yesterday, we have invested about, as a Commonwealth, we've invested about $2 billion in conservation over the last 21 years through the tax credit programs for easements. This bill is critical if we are going to protect that investment, and I reiterate my motion that it pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise.
Speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, we had a fair amount of debate on this yesterday, but I have to reiterate, just for the folks in the body who may have forgotten this, if you want to protect the program at the expense of the person who put their property in an easement, then vote for this bill. Some of us who went to law school, and Mr. President, you're among those, remember in real property we had a discussion about a bundle of sticks. And when you owned real property, you had a bundle of sticks in that property. That's right. And you only had so many sticks in that bundle. And what we do with a conservation easement is we give away most of the sticks in that bundle, and you're left with a few. And what this bill would do, and make no mistake about it, what this bill would do is it could force you to lose one of the remaining sticks you have as a property right if there's some ambiguity. That is contrary to every precedent we have in the law. It's contrary to every other precedent we have in the law. And I understand that there's a case in Bath County and somebody's trying to develop a conservation easement, but it's no reason to change the law and injure the landowners in Virginia because you have one bad example. This was a case where they simply built a barn, and easement said they could build a barn, but they also put a creamery and a bakery in the barn. And PEC didn't like them putting a creamery and a bakery in the barn. And the Supreme Court says it was ambiguous. It didn't say you couldn't do it, so they let them do it. But if you adopt this bill, you're going to be going against the landowner and taking away those bundles of sticks from them, the few that they have left, because they've given up most of them when they gave the conservation easement.
Thank the senator. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 621? Seeing none, Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I appreciate my friend from King William's point, but I would suggest that you are not taking anything away from the landowner when you are protecting the easement. Nobody forces a landowner to grant an easement. There's a generous tax credit that the taxpayers of Virginia have afforded that landowner or his transferee, and I would suggest that it's in the interest of every taxpayer in this Commonwealth that if the easement program, if the tax credit program is to continue, and we are to continue to take dollars out of our treasury to benefit those who put their land in easement, if the tax credit program is to continue, we have to take steps to protect it, and this bill will do just that.
For what purpose, Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise.
Mr. President, I rise to speak in opposition to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
And I remember a few years ago, a senator from Bath and I teamed up on something that actually made it into the Constitution of Virginia. And that was the property rights constitutional amendment, in which we said that there was something more important than the public purse of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that is the property rights of individual property owners all across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And this bill fundamentally changes the law of the Commonwealth of Virginia in a manner that prejudices property owners, undermines their property rights. There is a rule of construction for contracts in Virginia. And yes, the property owner received a benefit, but that's true of any transaction in the marketplace. Somebody receives a benefit, and that's not a legitimate reason for saying you're not entitled to the benefit afforded to you by the law. And the law is that a contract is to be construed against the drafter. And if there is anybody more powerful with more power in a transaction than the Commonwealth of Virginia, I don't know who it is. This is as close to a contract of adhesion as they come to. Yes, I don't have to enter it, but once I do enter it, I don't have much choice about what it says. And when the organization that holds that easement decides that they don't like the way that I'm conducting my farming operation, then rather than either having a level playing field in which there's no presumption as to how to construe that, or consistent with the regular rule of construction, it's that any ambiguity in that contract is to be construed in favor of the person who did not draft that contract. We're substituting our judgment in favor of the sovereign, the Commonwealth of Virginia, or the holder of that easement, the Outdoor Foundation or whoever it is, and are saying that we're going to construe that against the property owner. And I would respectfully submit that that's the wrong way to go. It's inconsistent with our property rights. It's inconsistent with the spirit of the constitutional amendment that we linked arms and the people of Virginia overwhelmingly passed. And I would hope that we would consider voting no and rejecting this once again.
For what purpose is a junior senator from Richmond City? Senator Morrissey, rise.
Mr. President, rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, Senator Deed's comments about protecting these conservation easements are critically important. It's personal to me. I have a large number of acres on the James River that I would like to see exist there 50 years, 100, 150 years from now. I love these conservation easements, or these turning property into conservation so that it's protected. With that said, I would suggest to people in the body that there is a lot to be said about maintaining the rule of law as it pertains to those people that draft contracts. It has been the law in the Commonwealth for several hundred years that any ambiguity in the contract is interpreted against the person that drafted it. In other words, since that person drafted it, that person is perceived as knowing exactly what he or she wanted to do, and an ambiguity is interpreted against it. It's for that reason, and not that I don't love conservations, that I am voting against the bill.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Northern Chesapeake? Senator Spruill, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. After a long discussion yesterday and today, I move the pending question.
Question is, shall the pending question be ordered? All in favor of the motion?
Mr. President, can this go by temporarily?
No, the pending question can't be interrupted.
I'd advise, as a polite courtesy, maybe not move the pending question so a member can vote.
Question is, shall the pending question be ordered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? All the senators voted. Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 24.
Ayes 15, noes 24. The pending question is not ordered. Debate may continue. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Could this bill go by temporarily?
Without objection. Senate Bill 621 will go by temporarily.
Mr. President, could it go by for the day?
Is there any objection? Okay, there is. Good try. I think that may complete that section of the calendar, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
I would request that we stand in recess until 2:55.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, the Senate will stand in recess until 2:55.
Yes, ma'am.